Hello and welcome to Las Vegas Summer League stream number 4. Um, I'm excited to have. I think that this is going to be the definitive weirdos group. From looking at the players, I say nothing of our guests who are all upstanding people who would never be described in such a way. But we have some funky players to talk about, and to talk about me or to talk about those players with me. um, I am joined by two wonderful gentlemen. Say hello, everybody. How are you doing today?
Hello, how's everyone doing?
What's
Introduce
up, masses?
introduce yourselves. Let people know where they can find you.
Oren Weisfeld. I'm a writer at Raptors Republic, covering the Raptors over there, among a couple other places. And you can find me on Twitter at Oren Weisfeld. And yeah, looking forward to doing this. I'm not going to spoil who it is just yet.
I mean, people do know. To be fair, it wasn't the marketing materials.
Yeah, I know.
And who else do we have?
Hello, Marco Romo. You can find me at Five Reasons Sports as a writer and contributor, sometimes podcaster. I'm here to cover the homie, the shooter, Max Strus.
Yeah. I think a man who could definitely have his jersey retired at Summer League one day.
Yeah,
Put him in the Nate.
I used to Paul.
Yeah. Put him in the Nate Robinson Hall of Fame. So yeah, let's jump right into this. Up first, we have the secret prospect. Let us know what the 5 areas that you want to talk about with the secret prospect are.
All right. Well, my prospect is Delano Banton, 21-year-old point guard that Toronto drafted with the 46 overall pick. He's from Toronto, from Rexdale in Toronto, so he's the first Canadian to be drafted by the Raptors, which is kind of significant and kind of fun, and will just give fans even more reason to cheer for him. Should I talk a little bit about him?
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's your show.
perfect. So he's a 6'9" point guard, about 200 pounds. He has a 6'10" and a bit wingspan, so he's extremely long, extremely tall, but not very strong yet. He played one season at Western Kentucky, then he redshirted at Nebraska, and then he played last season at Nebraska. And he's really improved, like just looking from his freshman season and then to his season at Nebraska, and then even in summer league as it kind of went on. He's someone who improves kind of as the season goes along and as a game goes along. So that's just something that, I mean, you kind of want to see in prospects. And I think it's one thing that has jumped out about him for Raptors fans is just that he seems to get more comfortable as the game goes on and the numbers show it. So the 5 things I was kind of looking for in summer league, after watching admittedly not a ton of college film, but the 5 things that I was kind of focusing on and was looking for were, one was the handle. Nebraska played him as a point guard. The Raptors probably want to play him as a point guard, so curious to see how it would look against NBA level competition. In the half court is one thing where, he has some shiftiness, but how comfortable would he be getting into the paint? And then in transition is a whole nother thing that I'll talk about, where just how comfortable is he dribbling it up the floor in transition. Offensive aggression was the second thing. He is more of a playmaker than a scorer. He doesn't look for his own shot as much as he looks for his teammates, and that's a pretty good thing on the Raptors, I'd say, just because there's not a ton of pure point guards on the roster.
No, that's the downside of having 12 6'9" wings. Is there's not a natural. Well, there's 12 6'9" wings,
Right.
And then 2 undersized combo guards. So you're telling me none of those 14 players are point guards?
I actually am, because even Fred and Malachi, who are the 6 foot, like debatably 6 foot point guards on the team, are really score first guys. So yeah, on top of the 6'9" wings, the 2 short guys don't love passing the ball as much as you would think they do. So I would say out of all those players, Banton's mind is probably wired the most to find his teammates rather than to score. And obviously, like I said, that can be a good thing. It can also be a bad thing when he doesn't look for his own shot, and he probably should at times. So on defense, screen navigation at Nebraska, they really switched a ton of screens. They played a lot of zones, so he just didn't have to like fight over screens. Like very rarely did he fight over screens. And in the summer league, it was a different. I think his whole life, like if I were to guess, he's been so long and quick that he could get under screens and just contest shots. And summer league was, a time where they made at some points he had to go over screens, and that's something that I'll talk about. 4 is kind of the risk factor. How risky? I was curious to see what kind of risk he would bring to summer league, because at Nebraska he threw a lot of crazy passes, and on defense he goes for steals constantly, digs down in the paint constantly, and kind of lets his man hang out in the perimeter. And I was looking to see if he would continue to do that at the NBA level. And then 5 is just foul drawing, whether or not he had improved at all in that area. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these are some good parameters on, like, not just understanding Banton, but like understanding why he would be really interesting to the Raptors. In the 40s in this draft, there's a lot of like dudes who kind of fit their profile, and Banton is a little bit not outside the profile, but he offers a different skill set. Especially point number 4, like he tries some things, y'all. And we have some people who are, I would say, we have no lack for confidence on the stream tonight. With Strus, with Jalen Johnson, with Jacob, like we are going to get into it. All right, so yeah, let's dive into our first set of clips.
Yeah, and real quick, that's the thing I love watching film about Banton, is like that creativity really jumps out. And this game is the last game the Raptors played in Summer League. It was against the Brooklyn Nets. They sat Malachi, Scotty, Precious. So Banton had the ball in his hands a lot more than he had in the rest of the game. So in the rest of the tournament, so you saw like more of those flashes of creativity, but it's still like, I was watching some footage at Nebraska, and like even the passes of this game didn't top like the craziest stuff that he's thrown. So keep that in mind, I guess, because he's really creative, and that's the thing that is so fun about watching him. Yeah, so this is just Banton scoring, which is kind of a rare flash, but the way he gets the second defender here with this hezzy is just incredible, and I had to include it. He got him all the way. And I mean, I'm going to talk about this even more later, but Banton gets to the rim extremely quickly. He's so long, and his legs and his arms are so long that once he has a step on his, sorry, can you pause it?
Yeah.
Once he has a step on his defender, he's at the rim extremely quickly.
Which clip?
Yeah, no. And then we can do the second clip now.
Okay. Just if you want me to say run it back, just say run it back. And
okay, cool.
While you're talking, just say keep that play running, and we're good.
All right, so this is out of the pick and roll and just finding the shooter. I just want to talk about his feel a little bit, because so we can pause it before going to the next one, because like as soon as he sees this defender come into the paint and try to take away the drive, he doesn't hesitate at all to throw the pass. And like Banton has come in, he's 21 years old, 2 seasons of college. So on one hand, you would expect a little bit of that, but he's an extremely like high field player who, there was one game where, 2 similar pick and rolls to this one, he took charges on both, and it was like, instead of finding the weak side shooter in both situations, and it was like, all right, you need to do better. And then he immediately will correct himself. So that's the thing about like his playmaking feel, is just like he seems to know where his guys are, and he seems to know, or he seems to react to what the defense is doing extremely well. Like he's not yet at the stage where he's baiting defenders as far as I see, and maybe that'll come. But even if it doesn't come, I'm not really worried, because the slightest, he sees this guy, I don't know who the defender is, put 2 feet in the paint, and the slightest like movement or hesitation, and the pass is fired off, and the pass is crisp, and usually, he makes the right read in these situations. So like, yeah, his ball screen, pick and roll work is extremely good. And I'll talk more about how he actually uses screens, but yeah, just his feel for the playmaking, it's high level, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so quick too. Like it's not that he's ruminating on decisions. Then like we're going to talk about this when we get to Jalen Johnson, where he's kind of only selecting the best of the best. Banton makes the first decision possible, like as quickly as possible, and wants to get the ball out, sometimes to his own detriment.
Exactly. So sometimes to his own detriment, well, to his teammates' detriment because they're not expecting it. Okay, so if you could just pause it when he gets the rebound. So I have to talk a bit about the Raptors here because the Raptors, all of their draft picks, Scotty over Suggs, Banton over, Sharif Cooper, a lot of people wanted. It implies that they want to play a very specific way. And I mean, there's been some talk about it, but in case there's people on here who don't really understand what the Raptors want to do, I mean, they want to play a lot of defense and they want to run in transition, and they're not too worried about the half court creation. They haven't drafted with that, skill set as a priority. And so they also want as many players as possible to be able to handle the rock in transition, because whoever takes it off the glass, they want it to just push it up the floor immediately, because the extra pass just, takes time away from what you're doing, kind of. So Banton is so tall. At least this is my theory, that he's not really comfortable dribbling with speed in transition. So this was just an example of a play where, the numbers weren't crazy, but the Raptors, Coach Mutombo probably would have wanted him to push the ball up the floor here and create something in transition. But I don't think he's yet comfortable doing that with a lot of speed with smaller guards on him, because he just, he has to dribble so high. So in the half court, he gets extremely low with his dribbles, and like that's how he avoids to not turn over their ball. But in transition, he can't be that low while still playing really fast. Mm-hmm. And so that's a skill I think he really needs to improve on, because they're going to want him to play in transition and push the ball up the floor. So yeah, we can play the rest of the clip, but it's just like, it was just an opportunity to run it, and he's not comfortable doing that, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, is like the rest of the play kind of doesn't matter, because like there was a formation there and he squanders it. Just it's not too much. Like you still get to a pick and roll or whatever, but it's not the possession it could have been if he just grabs and dribbles up at full speed.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where he is useful in transition. As a finisher, he's much more useful than as a playmaker, and he's incredible at getting steals. He has extremely long arms. This guard just doesn't expect him to be able to get that, and he does, and then he takes off. So yeah, this is a really good job by him. He gets the and one on this play, I believe, and he's a really good finisher around the rim. Not very good with contact around the rim, but here he gets one. But yeah, like that's what he can bring to the table right now in the NBA in transition, is more so as a play finisher than a guy who's going to initiate it.
Yeah. I also just love that he steals a step before getting the two. So instead of like being a floater, this is right at the rim. It's a theme we've had a lot this week, is guys who don't steal steps, and he seems to have that down already.
Okay, so so let's run this back. Okay, so I talked about this briefly in the 5 things, but like I said, in Nebraska, he didn't have to go over screens a ton, and so Summer League was the first time I really saw him do it, and he really struggled. It's hard for a 6'9" point guard to chase guards over screens, and someone as skinny as him to not get hit on them, and yeah, he really struggles. That's a big area for emphasis. Defensively, that's the biggest area of emphasis for me, is he needs to get stronger. He needs to get better footwork. He needs to be a little bit more aware of where the screens are coming from, because like here, even like at this point, the guard pushes him off, and that's like a significantly smaller person than him. That shouldn't be happening, I guess, even though like, yeah, his center of gravity is lower, but Ben just needs to put on some strength, and he needs to, you know, just probably get more reps fighting over screens at a certain point, because, and I'll talk about this later, he often just believes that he can, you know, catch up with someone due to his bounce and due to his length, but it turns out he actually can't, and he's going to get, like, in the NBA, teams are going to run him through ball screen options because they know this, and so that's the thing that I'm looking for him to improve on in the G League, where I assume he'll start the season, before they can really bring him to the NBA, because otherwise I think teams are going to run him through a bunch of ball screens, and he's going to really have a hard time keeping up.
Yeah, this looks to me like a guy playing over for the first time in his life. Like, it's not bad for that, but it's a little bit difficult.
Right.
Going over is hard.
Yeah, and like, pause it, on top of like going over being hard, he's 6'9", and he's going to be asked to defend point guards, I think, at least in some lineups. So it's not like an easy like ask of me to just be like, learn how to do it, but it is a swing skill defensively for him. Oh, this is just hilarious. I had to include the beginning of this fight. I think there's like 4 just missed layups. And then, yeah, this is just Ben using his size really well. I think he gets the block. He just goes up vertically at the rim and contests the shot. And like, when we talk about the Raptors draft philosophy, I think like this sums it up pretty well, in terms of like, your point guard is last man back and blocking the shot, or at least contesting it so that they miss it. Like, Banton is versatile. Yeah, just pause it real quick. Ben's extremely versatile, and I think that's why the Raptors wanted him so much. You know, you talk about like, on both ends of the floor, a point guard who can probably also play some off ball, and we'll get to that, or play on the wing. And then defensively, he blocks a ton of shots, considering he's a point guard. He gets a ton of steals. He's just someone you can play at multiple positions on both ends, I think. And that's just really impressive. The amount that, yeah, like, he'll have like the opposing point guard get past him, but he's not very worried because he can just block their shot because he's so much bigger than them. And yeah, we can run this, or maybe start this clip over.
Yep.
Yeah, this doesn't happen a ton to him, but he can struggle with ball pressure from smaller guards. It's just a handle thing, I think. You know, like, for his size, his handle's really good, but for a point guard, I would say his handle's not really good. So yeah, he can just get a little bit uncomfortable. It's not a big deal to me. I don't know if you guys disagree. Like, I didn't see that happen a ton. Like, he's really good at getting really low in the half court, and like, you know, he's clearly mad at himself there for doing that. So it's something I saw a bit, but not a ton of.
Yeah, before we get to the handle, can we talk about, if he doesn't clap here, he 100% gets this deflection. Like, if he doesn't angrily clap, this is 1,000% within his wingspan. But just because he was so mad, he misses one of his, would have been a fairly easy steal for him. I mean, I think that the problem with guys who have rough handles is that the book gets out on them very quickly. So like, anytime, like the first time that, like, say, like, you know, the Heat play them, in the second unit, they'll let him dribble up the floor. For the first time. The second time, they'll just pick him up 94. And now it's because the scouting report is out, you can make this specific issue really clear. And like, with handle, especially with handle on second guards, you can really customize. Opposing teams can customize who guards him. And he probably plays smaller guards onto the floor, even if it's just to harass his handle for 3 minutes. I think that it's going to be an issue, because it'd be one thing if his handle was rough, but it's also that his handle is rough and he's like high hipped and skinny. That two piece is what makes it really difficult.
That's Tyler Hero problem.
Yeah, because like, if you have a bad handle but you can blow by people. I mean, LeBron James has had a bad handle for 20 years, and like, he still gets by people, because if he gets a little bit of a step by you, he just goes through you. With Banton, there's not really a natural counter for defenders who climb into him. Like, he can't get a first step by them. He has to either craft, or what I would suggest, which is just grift until people foul you. Those are probably his best options, but it's going to be a thing to monitor for the first couple of years, how the second time a team plays the Raptors is.
For sure. And I think the solution for now is to probably have a different ball handler bring it up the court and then swing it to Banton. But long term, that probably can't be the option, because like I do think once you get into the half court, he's going to be fine against most like ball pressure guys. But so this is just Banton attacking off like the second side action. Actually, okay, so the first pass is really nice. Can we just run that back, actually?
Yeah.
We talked about before, like, his teammate, like, him having such a good feel that even his teammates aren't ready, and, like, this is a good example of that. Gillespie was guilty of that way too many times, where Banton just found him under the rim, and he was like, oh my god, the ball's in my hands. I wasn't expecting this. But, yeah, against a tilted defense, like you see here, he gets to the rim extremely quickly, and then the dump off pass. So in situations like that, he's gonna thrive. Like whenever the defense is tilted and he has the step, like give him the first step, and like a 2-on-1 situation, he's probably gonna make the right read every time. And he's there so quickly that the additional help just can't come because his step is just really quick.
Yeah, bad possession for Freddie Gillespie. First, he drops a for sure dunk, and then he almost runs in. He almost knocks Banton all the way over.
Yeah. We don't talk about Freddie Gillespie's summer league actually as Raptors fans. We've made an oath, a blood oath, to not talk about it because it was not good.
Okay, I was previously unaware. That will be my last time mentioning it. It's weird they're playing 4-on-5 this whole time.
We'll probably have to mention him again because he'll make more mistakes. But yeah, so this is a good example. If we could just pause it at the top of the pick and roll.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, so like Banton, like I was saying earlier, he feels that he can kind of let guys get a step on him, but he'll just make up for it at the rim instead of getting a body on people. And I think this also has to do with him being a little bit afraid of contact. I'm not sure if that's something you've noticed, but on both ends of the floor, he kind of avoids it, and he's really skinny, so that makes sense. But instead of just getting to the place first and taking a charge or making the ball handler reset, like he kind of lets this ball handler get by him and thinks he's going to finish, or he thinks he's going to stuff him at the rim, and he just doesn't get there against quicker guys. So yeah, defensively, that's another thing to work on, is just like positioning and the footwork has to be better rather than always relying on the length.
Yeah. This strikes me as we talked about it a little bit with Chris Duarte, as like a guy who's used to getting away with stuff and then realizing that like that probably won't fly at this level.
Right.
Like Duarte was hyper aggressive with ball handlers just because like he knew the angles, and then here there were some givebacks. This looks like a guy who like isn't in the right position entirely, is giving up a little too much, thinks that he can length block it, and it's like, oh no, this is the NBA.
Yeah, he definitely thought he was going to just stuff this here by the look of it, and then yeah, he didn't. But honestly, that he wasn't guilty of that a ton in summer league, but we'll see in the NBA. And this is just, we talked about the creativity, and this is just like his length allows him to see and make these passes over the defense, and the reaction time is so quick. He's not looking at Gillespie at all. Defense has no idea what's coming, and Gillespie didn't finish it here. Yeah, okay, great. But that's not the point. The point is that he makes extremely creative reads that no one else is expecting. And, look at the heads of Brooklyn's team. They did not see that pass coming until it was in his hands already.
And then nothing happened afterwards.
No, he missed the whatever. Oh yeah, can you run this back actually? So watch Banton the whole time. So actually, yeah, watch him the whole time, and I just like his movement. He misses the three, and he didn't hit a single three in summer league, and I'll talk about that. But right here, there was a pass to be made.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Then he spaced out to the 3-point line. What I like is that like he's very aware of where to be on the floor, and because he doesn't have a shot, he's going to have to be a good cutter. He's going to have to be positionally good at just spacing out for his teammates. And yeah, we can pause it before going on to the next one. And this gives me some hope that he can play off ball because he doesn't have a good shot. And, you know, the Raptors have lots of other ball handlers on the team. So he's not going to be the primary, at least for probably a couple years. So can he play off ball is really the question right now. So in my opinion, like there's two swing skills for him. One is the ball handling, because then he could be a primary, and I think he could be a pretty good one if he just tightened it up a little bit. And then the other is the shooting. He has a really slow release and just wasn't going in summer league. I think he shot like 27% in Nebraska.
24.
24%. Yeah, so he's not a three-point shooter at this point in his career. I'm sure that's something the Raptors told him to do, and they told him to shoot. I'm sure with the 905, he's going to be taking 5 threes a game because that's just what they ask out of these type of players. And so obviously you hope that it comes along, and they've had a lot of success turning guys into shooters who came out of college and weren't them. I like what Blake Murphy wrote in his scouting report about Ben. He said he does the difficult stuff well and the teachable stuff poorly, and the shot is one of those things. So yeah, that's the second swing skill for him, is the shot, because right now to play him off ball would be really hard and it would screw up the spacing, but at least he gives you some of that cutting and that positional awareness. Like he's never going to be in the way of the action. He's an extremely smart offensive player. And so I do have some faith that he could play a little bit of off ball. But yeah, one of those things really has to come along if he's ever going to be like a really good rotation player, I think.
Yeah, I just like the what I think is improvised Spain here, where he decides to essentially like function as a Spain cut, where the tagger has to choose. The jumper like looks it's slow, but mechanically it looks fine. It's a lot more difficult when he has to do it with some movement. But
yeah, and real quick, if you pause it, he makes like those off ball. Like he didn't make contact in this one, but he makes off ball screens all the time. And that's the other thing I forgot to say when it comes to his off ball play, is that like he goes off script a lot and he'll just set screens for his shooters a lot, and when the defense isn't expecting it. And so that's what I mean when I say like he's a really smart offensive player, is that he mixes it up, and just because he doesn't have the ball in his hands doesn't mean like Banton, similar to Scotty Barnes, is always felt on the floor. I think like you know where he is. His presence is known for better or worse all the time. But yeah.
That being said, he did not make a single three at Summer League.
He did not. So that's this is just an example of the cutting that I was just talking about. He kind of fakes him one way and goes the other, and yeah, he didn't make a single three, but there's some off ball stuff that is promising.
How worried are you about playing him and Scotty together, like as rookies?
Oh, I don't think they'll play together.
Okay.
I think I can talk about this at the end, but I think he'll start in the 905, and then we'll see if he gets the call up.
Yeah, I just meant even in like theory. To me, it doesn't seem like tenable even for like small scale minutes. But
let's see what happens here. Oh yeah, so let's run this one back. He has really good patience with ball screens. He doesn't rush like a lot of players. He plays at his own pace. And here he rejects it and drives baseline. And he is guilty of leaving his feet way too often. But, you know, with the length, he just makes up for it. Like I almost never saw him turn the ball over because he left his feet, because he can just make up for it so well because of his vision, because of his length, he can pass like with either hand. And I don't know if you saw him, like that is one thing that I'm gonna watch for at the next level, is like how much does he get into trouble for leaving his feet? Because in summer league I felt like generally he was okay, and he got away with it and just made a pass and kept the ball alive. But I think maybe there's some luck involved there, and if he can, like, maybe he is one of those people that can just, like, make live reads after jumping, but maybe he's not, and that's something I'm going to be watching for.
I'm always hesitant of big decision makers who have to jump. They can already see over a defense, and there's a thin line between very valuable tool and crutch that they're using to pad their other inabilities, usually to get by people or to force rotations. It's not always great, but it is something to watch to see how the response goes as NBA rotations figure out why a big ball handler is leaping.
Yeah. Yeah, so here again, he leaves his feet and he makes a floater, and he got lucky. But when he left his feet, he definitely did not have the intention of shooting a floater. I think he just noticed that no one was cutting, and he didn't really have a pass, and so he just put it up, and it went in. He actually has kind of a nice middle game in the floater range, and he'll post up smaller guards and hit hooks over them. So that's nice. But again, leaving his feet actually here, and he gets spaded out. I guess there's 3 in a row. I didn't notice that, but yeah, he finds the corner shooter here, and it's a nice pass, and this is what I mean, where he can make up for it. But
yeah, this is the worrying one to me of the 3,
right?
Because like you see, he releases it after it's not a planned read. He's jumping, he's looking for something, it's not there yet, and you can watch like his body flail as he generates power for it, and that's the worrying part. So like if that moment wasn't there, he was just going to land out of bounds.
Yeah, I think he thought he could get the layup and then realized that he didn't have the step, and then yeah, he barely got that pass off. Like, that's why he couldn't actually shoot it. And they did get a 3 out of this, so again, like, he got lucky. But yeah, I do think that there is some luck playing into those clips. Again, like, I really like the patience with the ball screens, and then that's just a really nice pass. Like, again, this is a situation where I think that's Champagne in the corner. He's not expecting the ball. I think he even cuts a little bit, and it's rare that. Okay, the pass is also high.
Yeah.
But with that being said, it's rare that guys come into the NBA with that pass in their bag. Like just the skip over to the weak side. That's a pass that not a whole lot of ball handlers have, and it's something that Banton has walking into the NBA, and like that's what makes him special. I'm happy that we're ending on a good note, even though it's not a perfect pass, but you see the flash of what he's trying to do, and what he executes. The Champagne he still gets the shot off here. Those are the flashes that are so intriguing, is that he's walking into the league as a 21-year-old with, the patience to wait for this ball screen to connect, wait for the defense to take a step in, and then fire off a pass like that. That's what's intriguing about him.
So, Marco, the thing that jumps out to me is something that I know you're familiar with, which is people going under pick and rolls and just sitting on them from the years of watching Jimmy Butler. And you know how difficult it can be to beat a defense that's like, where they're basically like, yeah, make this pass all the way over the top or try to fight through 3 guys. Like, as somebody who has experience with that watching experience, what do you think are the necessary tools beyond just hitting that cross-court pass perfectly that a bigger wing who wants to run slot pick and roll needs to have in their bag? Like,
Well, that's the thing that I remember. I was talking to somebody about this. That was the first thing Eric Spoelstra was like, "We're going to make you the best passer you can be, because we know how teams are going to cover you." And that's the biggest thing is probably get a mid-range jumper, and then be able to make these kind of slight passes through defenses like that, which is a thing that Jimmy Butler was like really good at. He averaged like 8 assists last year, which was his career high. Eric Spoelstra digged into him, like, you need to make certain passes, the pocket passes, the dump offs to Bam, who's a great target to have those passes to. It helps to have a big guy that can, rim run like Bam can and make those second decisions for Jimmy. It's also important for a guy that's not looking to score, because Jimmy's also, he wasn't a guy that looks to score, at least for the past couple years in Miami, which is kind of funny considering what he was in Philadelphia, because he came off a lot of the screens to shoot the mid-range. But his shot kind of depreciated, and whenever the shot isn't there, it has to be a lot of pinpoint passes or kind of getting guys into the right position. You have to kind of work the ball, make sure guys aren't, I don't know how to put this, they aren't off their mark. So you got to put the guys where they need to be. Jimmy yells a lot at guys for that. He's always saying, you're not supposed to be here. He's a perfectionist about that, which is what Eric's supposed to, he actually learned from him, because Eric is like a perfectionist about those type of things. But yeah, I think it's mostly get a mid-range jumper, which is pretty hard to do. I don't expect that to happen, but probably more of the passing and kind of these in-between areas.
Yeah, that's a really good point about knowing where guys are, because I agree with you. The mid-range, it's not really close, but there was so many instances in the film I watched where Banton, found guys and they weren't ready for it, and like that's just a result of playing with guys for the first time. But I think like developing chemistry, just like you said, is going to be huge for him. The other similarity with Jimmy is that Jimmy's a great jump passer, or what, I don't know what the word is, but yeah, is that Banton, the more chemistry he has with the other four guys on the court with him, I think that's when his playmaking is really going to come through, because like we just talked about, he makes so many reads that are just unscripted, and the more guys get used to that, the more they'll actually expect it and just always be ready for the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a good that's a kind of good point. Like, I think that yeah, he's going to have utility as a screener, being 6'9", and have a good understanding of angles. But the reality is that his pathways to being a really effective pick and roll ball handler flow through these 3 or 4 specific skills. And what do you know? Those are also many of the things you outlined. That's crazy. Who would have possibly known that? Wow. Do we have any other like things that jumped out about Banton? Do we have other things that like were big question marks? I mean, obviously 0% from 3 is going to jump out to pretty much everybody. To me, the thing that I was most encouraged by is that like the steal and block percentages like weren't fluky. Like he was making the right reads. Sometimes guys just get blocks because they're in the right place, or somebody's like throwing up, garbage, and they happen to be the person standing there. But like I felt like he was consistently making the right rotations, and for a guy who's going to need to do so, like while he is long, he is not particularly like athletic. So the intersection there needs to be feel rather than just like length plus fantastic bounce, like kind of Chris Boucher, who when he was younger got blocks that he shouldn't have because he missed the rotation, but he was still long enough to go get it.
Still.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but like Banton is not playing with those margins, and so seeing him perform well with that level of feel was really important to me. And I think overall, I would say this is an encouraging summer league, which is certainly something that like I don't think that if you look at the stat line you come away with, but looking at the film, it came away pretty positive.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, the Raptors drafted Scotty, and then they drafted Banton and David Johnson. And at least from what I heard, the hype was more around Johnson, at least from like the draft community that I was listening to. A lot of people felt like Johnson was a steal, and I felt like it was pretty quiet on the Banton front. And he impressed me. Like we said, like the shooting percentage from 3, he didn't hit a 3. He shot, true shooting was 37.3, not at all good, but the flashes of playmaking were like elite. And when you consider the Raptors roster, there's not a ton of true, creative playmakers on it. And so he fills that void. And then some of the things that we're talking about in terms of like, how he's going to struggle in the half court, I think the Raptors, at least like that system gives him somewhat of an out where he can probably play in the next year or so without developing those half court skills, just because there'll be enough spacing around him. He'll play in transition. And like you just said, the steal rate, the block rate allows him to play defense, and Nurse is going to play guys who can play defense. And can score in transition. So I think he at least has like a year or two to like improve on that on those fronts while maybe getting some run. The other thing I was gonna hit on was, the turnover percentage looks really bad. I think he had a negative assist to turnover ratio. A lot of that is playing with, certain centers who weren't on the top of their game, but also just playing with guys who aren't expecting the pass. And he's risky, but I like the risk. Like more often than not, when it's a turnover, other than his first game, he had 5 and they were just uncharacteristic. For the most part, the passes he's throwing are like good process things that maybe just aren't resulting in good looks. But yeah,
I mean, I'm a big believer in good turnovers. I think that a lot of Banton's hype came earlier in the year when people were really excited about him and the shooting early returns. I think like the first 10 games were really positive, and then the back half of the season they returned closer to the Western Kentucky levels. And I think that was more of an adjustment. Where I think it's easier to write off David Johnson's sophomore season. It's just like, yeah, he went back to school when he probably shouldn't have. It's easier to hype David Johnson than it is, because so much of David Johnson's stuff seems contextual. Where like Banton didn't shoot. He played it at, he played up a level compared to where he started college, but it's just difficult to feel as excited knowing that the issues persisted for a third year.
Yeah, and you asked earlier about if he can play with Scotty Barnes, and I think the answer is if one of them develops a jumper. But as of right now, no. Like, last thing is just that, I think he's going to start as the 905's point guard, and I think that's must-see television. Like, tune into 905 games if Banton is their primary, because it's just going to be really fun. And there's going to be a lot of learning along the way, but it's going to be really fun, and hopefully one of those two guys develops a jumper, and then maybe they can see time together. And if that's the case, that'll be some interesting b-ball.
You heard it here. Marco says get a bouncy center to catch lobs. That's going to be the best thing possible for his development. All right. Yeah. Speaking of
Precious, maybe.
Yeah.
Soon.
Well, Precious might spend some time in the 905. So let's move on to Precious's former teammate, and somebody who will most definitely be playing with Bam this year, Max Strus. If you are unfamiliar with the Max Strus show, it's very fun. It's unhinged at times, and I'm really excited to get into it. So, Marco, tell us about the areas of attention that you're paying to one Max Strus.
Well, we all love the Max Strus train here. The 5 things I was really looking at was defensive improvement, mostly in the positional stuff, and not getting caught out in an island, which happened a lot last year and with Miami when he actually got minutes because Miami was so low on bodies. His handle utility, improved kind of dribble action, knowing when to use his handle, because it's not great, but it's about how he's using it, because most of the time he gets caught off the screens and he has to find guys faster, so he doesn't get caught dribbling too much whenever he's trying to get to the rim. Also, the third thing, leverage gravity, basically using his movement to his advantage, the same way that Duncan Robinson does. It's a thing that Miami's scouting department really liked when they first saw it, because he was one of the top guys in college with using screens, and I think he was top 6 according to Synergy with shots off of screens. That's a thing they really liked. They think he can even get better at it, which I think they're actually right, because when I look at him, I think there's still some areas he can improve on here and there, but it's really good where he's at right now. It's not at Duncan Robinson levels, but that's like elite levels of screen usage. Another thing, continued expansion, ability to finish at the rim. He's funny enough, this is one area he's a lot like Jimmy Butler. He just kind of pounds his way in there. He's not very crafty. He's not very light on his feet. He just kind of barrels his way inside, which is actually a thing I remember watching last year in some film stuff. When he actually did play, he really tries barreling into guys. He's not afraid of contact, which is a good thing for a guy his size. He's a very burly guy. kind of reminds me of like, I don't know, like a really strong version of Duncan, because Duncan's also a really good finisher. But it's just that they finish at the rim really differently. Strus tries to overpower, which is not a bad thing, but he has to kind of make sure not to be out of control when he's getting to the rim. And the last thing is definitely the improvement on balance on his threes, in movement mostly. Also off the dribble stuff, which funny enough, they were trusting him more. I don't know if they're going to trust him a lot during the season from what I saw, but definitely on movement shots, coming off his screens, stuff like that. Because a lot of what I saw last year, his balance would be kind of off. He wouldn't be straight at the rim. He'd always kind of be shooting on his way to setting his feet, which is not good when you're a shooter. You got to be set immediately. Hopefully Duncan teaches him that, and I think he kind of improved on it from what I saw. And hopefully we'll see it here in the film.
Yeah, I think a thing with Strus that like is, I think, more representative of like 85th percentile shooters, and sort of the difference between like being a like one of the best shooters in the world and a world historical shooter, is the ability to take wild stuff like sprinting as hard as possible one direction and then land exactly where you took off. Like it's Strus at times can give in to the idea that he should flow with the direction his body is going, and it creates wild misses where like he took a kind of wild shot, and the only people who can really organize and land on balance are just like the Reggie Millers and you know Duncan Robinsons of the world. And holding anyone to that standard is crazy, but it's also like the degree of difficulty of what's being asked of them is stuff that like even the 90th percentile shooters can't produce the same value at.
It's one of the hardest things to learn as a shooter, and whenever you do have it coming out of college, which Miami thought they had with Tyler Hero, who is not actually bad at it. It's just sometimes he can also kind of give into flowing where he thinks he's supposed to be instead of where he actually is better off being, which is just more shoot the shot where you're going to be at, not where you think you're going to have to be at.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of one of those like shot maker versus shooter things that only gets exposed when you're at the very like hardest outcomes, that like even guys who are like shooters all the way through will turn into a little bit more of shot makers. I think this was also a Ray Allen thing for a long time, and only when he got to Miami at the very end, as the athleticism and usage percentage went down, did he really like absolutely hone in on this specific element. So I mean, like we're talking about just like really end of the line stuff, and I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah. Oh, all right. All right. So here's the first play. This first play actually kind of surprised me when I was at this game. I was like, they're actually letting Max handle the ball more and create stuff off the screens that they're giving him. Again, this is another example of him kind of just barreling to the rim using his big muscle. Like, it's not athletic. It's just he's just big and strong for a guy his size. He's 6'6", 6'9" wingspan, which they're not bad measurables, but they're fine. But yeah, he's kind of using the screen more, less for a shot, more going downhill, which they did. Even I saw a lot of it when I was looking back at the film. It's just surprising, but Miami uses a lot of these summer league things to kind of expand guys' games. G League is a different thing. They use it more to hone in on a certain skill when there are guys who are kind of, to lack of a better term, pigeonholed at a certain position or kind of archetype stuff. So summer league, they try to see if they can better expand their game. Which Strus last year, again, I said he's very good at barreling his way to the rim. It can be kind of out of control at times, which is what the one thing Miami really wants him to improve on. Drawing fouls is not bad at all, actually. From what I saw during summer league, I was kind of impressed with that. And this is one of those plays where he's not using the screen to get a shot off. He's using it to drive down to the lane.
Yeah, I think that to some level, give us one moment to welcome our final guest of the evening.
Hello.
Mr. Corban, how are you doing today? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here and excited.
Let the people know where they can find you. Let the people know what you're all about real quick, and then we can return to this one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, on Twitter at Corban NBA. Have a podcast I do called Ramble, which is just what the name implies. Rambling about basketball. Also work with some great people at Premium Hoops. Just a wonderful team over there that I'm lucky to be a part of as well. So that's where you can find me. That's where I'm doing most of my basketball things.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's great to have you.
Thanks a lot.
And we've got you all squared away. So now everybody is in frame. All right. We're just doing a little cinematography right now, and we can jump back to Max Strus.
All right, this is one of Miami's favorite kind of things to run here, which is Horns 5. Here, Strus, comes over to the screen, more or less a ghost screen, I guess. Omer does actually a great screen here. This is the kind of stuff that Duncan barely just learned last year, and that Miami really wants Max to hone in on, especially with the backup center he's going to be playing with. He's going to be playing with either Dwayne Dedman or, if he's hurt, it's going to be Omer maybe, which they're really high on Omer just an aside. So he's going to have to find these kind of plays a lot, especially when guys he's just a shooter. He's going to have to make these kind of passes, which it's a really nice pass because you got to be quick. You got to make the right pocket. Because guys like this, shooters like this, they're prone to just taking this shot. Taking that shot or after the pump fake. Miami's big on taking the extra pass that leads to a better pass. It's a thing that I think I was listening to a podcast. Dr. Romo, that was the first thing they told me, was like, you're going to have to shoot all the time, which is a thing Max is going to have to do. Shoot all the time unless there's a better shot for your teammates. And I think this is one of the passes I want to see him keep making out of that certain set, because it's one of Miami's favorite pet plays out of timeouts. And it's their first play out of the gates, actually. They run that a lot to start the game to give Duncan a shot or to give Bam a shot, as he's diving big a lot of times. And if he's going to play with Bam, he's going to have to learn to make that pass.
I think that's also important to sort of see how Duncan, or Tyler, in some circumstances, gravity is being guarded that particular night, and allows them to see sort of an inside look on the defense and their scheming. And for Strus to get to the point where he can, get this level of closeout. Like, it's one thing to be a really good shooter. It's another one for an NBA player to scream, "Oh God, like, please don't let him shoot this," which is basically what we have here. And then he makes the right pass. Like, a lot of guys, there are guys who can get a "Oh God" closeout. They aren't necessarily NBA level shooters. It's just being able to do that plus another skill, which is going to get him rotation minutes.
It's kind of like the difference of becoming or you're either a Duncan Robinson kind of guy that's going to have a lot longer of a career. All right, so let's run that back. Let's see. All right,
the full speed.
Yeah, this is another example of them using him less of a shot maker, and I think we saw this one. Yeah, it's less of a shot because most of the time you see him flare out to to get a three here and maybe catch Omer diving down. But he's actually kind of diving down to the rim. Again, paralleling to the rim. I think he gets the foul call here. And that's the thing he's good at. He's really good at, just barreling down to the rim because he's a big guy. And Omer does a really good job of setting the screen. He's patient. That's one thing. It's the only thing he's part of his game that's actually patient in, because he likes to get his shots up. Miami really doesn't like when he shoots out of control. They want to get him in control a lot of times. It doesn't have to be a shot every time. It has to be. They're trying to expand his game more, especially because he's going to have to play a wing a lot this year. He's their backup small forward at this point, which leads us to this one because he's going to have to guard up at times because they're thinking about playing Markieff Morris at the 5 a lot. So they might have him guard certain 4s here and there, or bigger 3s, because it's not going to be Gabe and it's not going to be Tyler Hero. So it's going to be up to Max to guard these bigger 3s or maybe sometimes even 4s. which is a thing he can do because he's a big guy, he's strong, he's a good. He has what I like to call the Rudy Gobert base, where a lot of it is like up in his chest and his arms, his shoulders, not down low, more of a Justice Winslow base like that. And that's good for him because they're going to put him in those positions a lot. It's going to be a lot of switching of those instead of switching the 1 through 2. He's going to play a lot of the 3. This kind of thing they're pretty much looking for him to continue doing all year because they don't want him out on the perimeter as much. They want him really guarding 3 through 4, and that's it. And that's really exclusively probably more 3 instead of 4.
Is this a matter of like kind of trying to choose the lesser evil between like Tyler Hero on the perimeter or Tyler Hero in screen navigation? Because like to me, when I see a guy like this, I kind of want him on like weaker wings. In terms of the ability to like because he is so strong and like he doesn't have great tools, he has like solid tools, and you could say like +3 with a 6'6" dude who's a +3 who's all upper body. Like there's some wings you might be able to punk in the NBA, but then you'd have to have Tyler Hero do more either screen navigation or perimeter work, and this seems like a somewhat of a compromise. Like I guess I'll throw this to the group. Like, what do you guys make of when you have a player who's physically strong with okay tools? Is it a matter of trying to find what matchup is best for them specifically, or is it a matter of trying to solve the most glaring problem on the defense?
That's an interesting question. I feel like it depends, like you said, like with the tools that they possess. Like if it's like a finite fit, like okay, they're as far as strength and being able to like switch among bigger players, then maybe you are trying to find a spot where you don't want them obviously isolated on their own. So you want to kind of not pigeonhole them, but put them in a spot that's best for them. Whereas I think the more the more versatile, of course you want to deploy them in different areas. But like in this specific case, I feel like he's a player I'd want to like fit. Like you want to have a strong defense and kind of fit him where he will like hold up most adequately, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense considering he's going to play a lot with Gabe Vincent, who's going to take most of the point of attack duties, and they're going to really try to hide Tyler in those bench units. It's going to be a lot of Dwayne Dedmon playing a usual drop that he was pretty good at last year. I hope he continues that because I think Max is going to put a lot of strain on because he's going to have to guard a lot of the wings that Gabe is too small for, and a lot of the wings that Tyler pretty much can't guard. Tyler, I give him credit. He knows he's good at positional stuff, but it's just he has a lot of limitations physically.
Yeah. Do you think that second unit is going to play a lot like together, like one starter or 0 starters? Because it seems like defensively it could really struggle.
I think it's going to be at least 2 of Jimmy, Bam, or Kyle are going to be on the floor. This is the thing that Spoelstra did when they got Victor Oladipo for the 4 very short games that he was there for. He had 2 of either Victor, Jimmy, or Bam out there to help out. I guess this year it'll be a lot easier. You have Kyle for the entire year. You have PJ Tucker at the 4 instead of trying to find a guy because they had no 4 for pretty much the 70% of the season last year until Trevor Ariza came along. And then, Trevor, as good as he was, he's exploited because he's not, able to guard up as much as Jay Crowder or PJ Tucker, who they have now. So it kind of compromises the defense. So, yeah, I don't expect him to be out there without at least 2 of the starters.
I would like a Google alert for Max Strus, Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker minutes. Just when those 3 are in a 5-man, it's going to get very interesting, and I don't know what it looks like, but they're liable. I mean, like PJ is going to be in a corner, but I mean, Lowry also has insane range and is prone to take things when take some deeper stuff when the offense breaks down. Which with some of these lineups that I've like kind of looked at for how second units could play out, or trying to get as much shooting on the floor or as much strength on the floor. There may be times where like Kyle Lowry 60 per 3-point rate comes out, and oh boy, am I excited for that. All right, let's jump back into this.
I'm very excited about that. Yeah, we saw this one. Oh, okay. So this is another one of those defensive things that I was talking about with Max. Again, he gets caught out on an island, which is not a thing Miami wants him to do. But whenever it's a guy trying to post him up, they're going to be more than fine with this stuff. He's strong enough for it. His base is good enough for it. All right, so this is the next one. All right, so this is one of my favorite ones that he actually did during Summer League. It's about how quick he changes directions off of the first dribble handoff. Again, Miami's bread and butter, the DHO. They're going to run a lot of this, even more than last year with Kyle Lowry now. He's really good at it. And hopefully he can give Duncan or Max here a few pointers about it. Hopefully Duncan can give him a few pointers here, because this is one thing that he needs in order to become not just a knockdown or an open shot shooter. He needs to add this kind of stuff to his game where he's moving with a purpose, which is the thing Eric Spoelstra loves to talk about. No wasted motions. I love how quick he kind of comes off the first dribble handoff. He immediately is like, okay, I don't have an advantage here. If I give it to Potter here, he's going to give it right back to me, and I got to make a quick decision. I'm not going to waste any motion. I'm going to drive right to the rim, use my strength, not my quickness, that's for sure, but use my strength to get to the rim and finish strong, which is another thing I wanted to talk about. Was Max is, he's good at finishing at the rim. It's not pretty. It's very Jimmy Butler like in that it's just, I'm going to overpower you and hopefully I get it in. It's kind of funny because Max is not Jimmy Butler, but he knows how to overpower smaller guys. Sometimes he can fly a little close to the sun, which is it can be a little of an eyesore, which is he does a lot, but it's fine. It's just the type of guy he is.
These closeouts, though.
Yeah, the closeouts. He again. That's another thing. He just he gets caught. Is one thing I complained a lot about, and I've heard in Miami Heat group chat that I'm in. We complain a lot about Max is not able to bend his knees a lot. He gets caught really stiff. I think there's another clip in here where he gets caught with his legs really stiff. He needs to be in a defensive stand a lot better. Positional defense again. That's the thing I really wanted him to improve on, and probably another reason I was supposed to didn't play him a lot last year when he was hitting shots. Okay, run that back again. The one before this.
The closeout again?
Yeah. That's I think they're probably going to have to hone in on him because he fouls a lot. That's another thing that Max does. Is he's a fouling machine. He has that in common with Early Duncan because Early Duncan was a foul machine as well. And you can fix that. You can hide that to a certain extent, but it comes to a point where you can't really hide it whenever you're playing with bench units. It needs to be. It doesn't have to be as much of a problem as it is. All right, so this one is another classic Horn 5. Set the go screen here. I just like how set he is. It's like no wasted motion again. This is perfect, spot up shot. And this is the kind of stuff that Miami loves. There's nothing wasted. He's just immediately going up into a shot. His feet are perfectly set. He's not drifting, which is a thing that Max can be capable of doing. He drifts a lot on his jumpers, which is the thing I hate. I think you hate it too, P. It's an eyesore when he does drift, but when he gets his balance right, because his release is pretty quick. That's a thing I haven't given him credit for so far is his release. That's the thing that Miami loved when he came out of college is how fast his release is. I think
it's also super compact. He does not need much in terms of purchase on the ground to get shots off. Also, Zaire, read the scouting report, dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't be going under. We're in the middle of the second quarter. You haven't figured out by this point this dude is pulling everything. I do not know what to tell you. Come on.
Seriously.
We love Zaire. Hopefully, he gets better at that.
I mean, we're gonna talk about him later. In another stream. But yeah, this is just one of those where it's you got to fight over on that. And you could Strus is telling him about it. You went under. Did it again?
Yeah, play one more time. I actually want to make a point
full
about
speed.
the
The
previous
5.
one. Yeah, the 5.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like the wasted stuff because I remember looking at some film from him playing last year. Is this shot? Even he would drift on it, and I was like, why is he drifting when he has such a compact kind of shot? It's about coming off of movement is the thing. Coming off of movement and being able to do this is elite guys do it. We talked about it earlier. Elite guys are great at it. When you hone in that skill, you're going to be in the league for at least 10 years doing the same thing, like this play right here. It's a perfect segue because he's using his leverage or the type of defense that's being played against him. They're thinking he's going to go over to the corner. He immediately uses that head fake, which is an underrated thing. I always think about shooters is using these kind of slight motions to offset the defense. Faking your way to the corner by just a simple head nod, and immediately you're going to be open on the wing using that the screen from Omer. He doesn't need to do much. He's just pretty much just standing there. It's like, oh, I'm setting the screen thanks to you. I'm going to get the screen assist. And it's a thing I love that Strus has improved on because last year he's just heading straight to the corner for the 3, but he's like, oh, I'm going to just take the easier path and use my advantage, make the pass easier for the point guard to give it to me. And I hope he keeps doing that. I don't think he's going to spend a lot of time in the G League because he's on a legit 2-year deal.
We kind of talked around this idea when we were talking about the Raptors. I've talked about it a little bit with the Knicks before, but having players who are like the same archetype who do the exact same thing, obviously at a lower level on a second unit, is a really fun way of having players learn. Like Tibbs loves having this, where he has a guy who does the exact same thing. He's just not as good at it on the second unit. And every year you can kind of see them learn like little tricks from the guy above them. I think it's partially because you're watching them all the time. I think it's also partially because they're cooking you with them in practice. And so you're just like, you're learning new things. They're like, oh, this is what a high level dude does. And it just through osmosis, you get it. And so like, you can see some of the little like Duncanisms in how he's operating off ball. And they're not like, like this is what Miami, he's just like, oh no, I saw this guy do it. And like, I'm stealing that now. And that's why Zaire just got cooked again.
That's a thing that's funny. It keeps being handed down because Wayne Ellington was the guy who was teaching Duncan all about that stuff and how to get set off with dribble handoffs.
That's the value of institutional knowledge. That's the value of institutional knowledge. It's handed down and handed down and handed down.
This is another bad closeout here by Max. He's kind of closing out his legs again. I really think they need to teach him how to bend his knees and how to get a better defensive stance because he gets caught stiff a lot on these kind of plays. I really think he can improve on it pretty quickly, but it's a thing that it's a lot like soccer drills. I remember doing as a kid was you need to learn how to stop, but not at a really bad angle where you're gonna be caught off guard by the offense. It's also a thing that Duncan has trouble with as well, but he improved on it immensely last year. I remember looking back on some of his plays because he used to get in foul trouble early. He used to have 2 fouls by the first quarter a lot. And last year, second half of the season, he didn't have those kind of problems anymore because they taught Duncan, you're long enough, you're big enough to defend some of these guys. You don't need to be reaching or being in this kind of really bad defensive stand. And I think that's the one thing that Max really needs to improve on. Is positional defense, which is I think you can get away with when you're not as athletic as some of the other guys in the league. Just look at Kelly Olynyk, how Miami was like, okay, you're a great positional defender. Just be that. Don't try to be anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that Max does that I think bothers me most is that he wants to be aggressive. Like all these closeouts aren't too soft. He's closing out like he moves like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And that's the thing that I struggle with is like all his footwork, he's getting blown by because he's closing out so hard. And he just doesn't have the movement skills to beat that, like to recover if it doesn't stick. So I think that just getting him to close out a little bit more reasonably, where it's like, look, man, like you do not have, I'm sorry, big man, you do not have the facilities for this. Like simply close out a half step shorter. He would get better results because like on each one we've seen, it's because he went after a ball handler, I think, to overcompensate, get touches on his strength, which is probably where all his fouls come from. Instead being like, look, you're long enough, you're starting to be a better defender. You don't have to play so physical to overcompensate for your quickness and length deficiencies.
Yeah. This is funny enough because they have another guy who they just signed to a 2-year deal. He's actually really good at that. Gabe Vincent. He that's one of the pluses I really like about him is that he's a smart closeout guy. He's really we were just talking about the Raptors. He's very much in the. They want to make him into the Fred VanVleet kind of lesser version of him. That's I'm getting off topic with Gabe Vincent over here. I'm a big Gabe Vincent guy. Whenever he hits his open shots. All right, so run that back again.
Yeah,
see that
give me one moment.
here.
Corban, it's always a single and a double. The first one at full speed, and the second one at less than half speed.
Got you. Okay.
There's always going to be a second look at everything.
Okay.
And then if you want to run back in your segment, just say, hey, can we run that back, or let's hold it here. I have stop, and I have rewind, the full shebang.
Okay.
For example, we're back to where we were. All right, Mark, talk me through this one.
All right, let's play after here. Let's get to. All right, so here again, they're using him again as a downhill kind of guy, and again that really surprised me, and I just really like that they're continuing to use the summer league kind of more as an expansion type of thing instead of just treating guys to just one certain thing. I remember they did that a lot with Bam. He was just a rim runner throughout the regular season, and then they were like, okay, you're going to handle the ball through this summer league, and we're going to see what you do with it. Hopefully something comes out of it. And, that's what they hope to see with Max is maybe something comes out of this short dribbles. Because they definitely don't want him dribbling a lot, but using, just a couple of dribbles here and there to get to the rim. The philosophy that the Utah Jazz used about you're going to shoot, pass, or drive. And that's what Miami really wants Max to be able to do is be able to make those quick decisions of you're going to shoot, pass, or drive, nothing else. And those drives are just going to be 3 dribbles, and that's it. If you don't have anything, get out of it. And I really like how he overpowers these guys when he tries to get to the rim. Again, in control. He can be a little out of control sometimes, but I like how in control he was on those certain plays. All right. Okay, so this is the positional stuff that I was. He did try to take a lot of charges last year because he gets caught out of position off ball. And he tries to make up for it with a lot of trying to take advantage by taking charges. The Kelly Olynyk thing again I brought up earlier. Kelly was one of the team's leading charge guys all year, and sometimes you can make up for it by just taking charges, just being at the right place at the right time, and hopefully he tries to do that. I hate charges myself, but he's going to learn a lot from Kyle Lowry about that. When you get playing with Kyle Lowry, you're going to learn some stuff about grifting.
Yep.
Yeah.
All this stuff.
Scam your way into a big body bends.
Exactly. I remember Miami used to actually give a certain award, I think, for the most charges taken. That James Jones was that guy for a long time, and then Kelly Olynyk was that guy. Udonis Haslem was that guy. Yeah.
Hey, you could just go ahead and etch Kyle Lowry's name in that. This is to me like the definitive Strus play, where he takes a step back, gets a hard closeout, and then without the slightest hesitation. What I will say is different than him in college is he recalibrates and shoots on balance. In college, he shoots the first one just leaning forward.
That's the thing I really liked seeing when I saw this. I was like, okay, he's about to lean to the right or something, or lean to the left, or he's going to be off balance. But no, he's like, it's no wasted motion. It's the same up and down, as a spot up would be, which is, again, that's what the elite guys do. They stick to they're on balance no matter who's going to be there, and he's going to make sure that shot's going to be off, up and down. And that's the thing that Duncan Robinson, again, you keep bringing up Duncan, but that's pretty much the kind of formula they're going for here. There's a reason they signed into the exact same contract that Duncan got. And that's the same reason Gabe got the same contract that Gabe Vincent got.
So what number does he have to shoot from 3 to make all of it worthwhile?
Oof. This is actually a conversation that was on the podcast. I wasn't in it. It was on 5 on the Floor. And I think the conclusion that was come to by, I guess, most of the fan base was around 39% on 4 attempts a game. But like, that's maybe being optimistic in terms of the minutes you'll get. I wouldn't be mad with like 40% on like 4 attempts. So that's around the number that everybody kind of came to. That's also you got to hit the open ones, which is I think he did last year, but there was also the taking too many. That's a thing that Max, he's a gunner. He's going to do that. Maybe some nights he's going to shoot 3 too many, and he's going to get benched early on. I don't know if we saw that last play where he was dribbling. I just included that one to kind of laugh about Max dribbling. I'm like, you don't want him to do the break. Again, he dribbles a lot with his head down.
Do you have a number where you start to lose, where your blood pressure starts to go up? Is it like 2.5? Is it 3?
Yeah.
Like obviously 1 perfectly, 1 or 2, fine. Like, is it the third one that you start to be like, well, hang on now?
Yeah, it's the KCO Paula rule, where after 3, I start to get worried for my well-being.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it reminds me of those old NBA Live games where you have the guy who can't dribble, and like something's gonna happen. Like the game's just gonna make it known that the dude shouldn't be dribbling. So inexplicably will bounce off his foot or something. That's how it kind of feels like. Like after the second dribble, you're like,
Yeah, when games were like, oh, if you're a 0 overall dribbling or like a 20 overall dribbling, what it means is you're a 4th grader. Not like you're a guy in the NBA who's not good. It's like no, you have the the ability, the physical abilities of a person who just got a corporal form. Okay, so overall, I feel like with Max, there's it's a pretty I don't want to say it's cut and dry because he does have quite a bit of nuance as a prospect and as a shooter specifically, but I feel like his outcomes are very narrow and they're dependent on what the number is. Like I don't think that the passing and even the dribbling matters if he shoots 44% from 3 on the hardest attempts possible. Like it just doesn't. None of this really matters. Even the defense doesn't matter if you shoot 45% from 3.
Yeah, especially because they're so low on the wing department. They're counting so much on him to be the backup 3 for most of the season until probably they're going to add somebody at the deadline. That's like a given for Miami. They always do that. So before that happens, he needs to pretty much hold firm. And anything after that is pretty much like it's gravy.
Yeah, unless he wins the spot. I think the only thing that's interesting in terms of like higher upside is the fact that they're running him off pin downs and like he's going downhill and finishing through a lot of like contact and through a lot of bodies. That's something that I didn't know he had in his game, and like you said, it's something they added on in Summer League. But yeah, like he's so big and strong that his ability to finish through contact and through bodies, like he's not that fast, but if he gets the footwork down off those pin downs, and obviously he has the shooting gravity, I think he could be pretty dangerous in those situations. But yeah.
And funny enough, that's actually a thing that he's better than Duncan at, is his ability to get downhill better, get downhill a lot faster. Because Duncan, he's a good finisher. It's just his finishes come a lot from great cuts, to his credit, but it's not like off of a couple of dribbles and he's in the lane, he's getting fouled, like that type of stuff.
Yeah, that one play you had, he absorbed contact really well going downhill. Like I wasn't like the cradling going up. Like you said, it is a little market difference there.
Yeah, it's a little fullbacky. But like
Jimmy Butler again.
Yeah, but like Jimmy has a little more grace. Like there isn't a Mike Allstott quality about Jimmy going downhill.
Yeah,
or Tim Tebow.
Yeah, you don't hear the NFL Films music in the same way you do with Strus, which by the way is that is a lot better than it used to be. So with that, I feel like we've been the only people on YouTube to spend a good 45 minutes talking about Max Strus, and I want to thank everybody for allowing me the platform to do that, because man, that's a perfect week. That is a perfect day for me. Talk about a bench shooter on a fringe playoff team. Just love it. All right. Now going from a guy who is probably going to be a contributor on a team that plays important minutes to a team that is completely and totally rebuilding in the Houston Rockets. Corban, talk to me about the areas of tension with Jacob, with Josh Christopher, with late first overall pick by Swag. Let us know what we're doing.
I mean, listen, having watched him, I got to say, like, the rate's off the chains for vibes, 100%. It's my type of player. Like, I'm right in line with that. Just putting that out there. Aside from that, though, yeah, like, he is, I'm excited by the chance that he's going to get a lot of run with the Rockets this year, but I'm also worried because I don't feel like, especially on, like, unless they're like rebuilding in a way that's going to set like sound principles, and I do credit Steven Silas for like at least trying to do that this upcoming year. There's a lot of things we could fit right in on the perfect like good stats, bad team type deal, while somehow being even less efficient. And so the areas of tension for me, I think one, obviously, the defensive approach is just having one. He has moments where, unlike some gunners, and I'm a fan of shot chucking happy guards. Like, I don't know why that's my thing, but like, unlike most, like, he can actually play defense like when engaged. He just picks really odd moments to really decide to like, okay, we're gonna focus and we're gonna stay tuned. He has flashes of great anticipation on the defensive end, but then he has like a lot of possessions where he's just there, like literally just there, kind of drifting toward the rebounds, kind of like just existing on the defensive end. So balancing that between like being ultra aggressive and locking down their person and just like all over the place rebound chasing, it's almost like a lesser version of like a Russell Westbrook approach to the defensive end. Like, there's gifts there that can like really be used, I feel, but just aren't. The second is finding easy buckets. I think that buckets will be had with Josh Christopher for sure. He's someone that, I mean, in college, that was his thing, getting it up. Through summer league, that was his thing, getting it up. And he even did a decent job in the game we're about to talk about in terms of scoring, but he also, the process, takes him a lot of shots, depending on the type of shots he's taking, which I guess would lead to number three, the most efficient usage. The shot selection is very questionable at times. He definitely has a one-track mind on scoring. Passing is like not even the second thought, it's like the afterthought of the third thought. So like that's where he is on that. And I guess that lead to picking spots too when he decides to be, okay, we're just gonna do this, take it to the hole, or I'm ISOing up and everyone and their mama know I'm about to shoot this jump shot, but like I'm gonna do it anyway because that's what it is, and not really being aware of like, okay, if and the defense is focused on you, there could be an open cutter, on the dugger spot. There could be someone spotting up in the corner, like just having that awareness. And I guess that would lead to 5, passing development. He had a couple of flashes of passes that I didn't even get them in this, but I guess just describing it, where he saw like the big off the pick and roll, but after the big men are already rolled and the advantage was lost. Like, it's like, okay, we're rolling and he's gone and I can't shoot it. Okay, now I'll give it to you. But they've already stopped that action. Now they've also countered you, and now you're trying to make a pass that isn't there. You had like 2 or 3 passes where you threw to a guy that like had already vacated the area that Christopher was throwing to, and it's almost like if you're taking a snapshot, like he takes one and then he continues as if everyone's still there, and then he goes, okay, and the moment has passed him by, or in many cases had long passed him by. With that being said, I mean, I'm excited to kind of talk about him. I think that there is like potential, especially when rained in, for him to be, I don't know, a pretty interesting shot-making guard.
See, I'm even, like, for me, the other side of picking spots is what happens when he plays off ball. So, like, sometimes he's off ball and he's in, like, just spot up mode. Just like, he disengages. And then other times he's hunting, he's hunting peripheral vision. He'll wait until a defender turns and he'll snap and get into the lane. And when he's down, like when a defender doesn't see him or a big is in rotation, there's a bounce pass there. Like he's extraordinarily dangerous. And so like for all of these, I think that there's a way of looking at the way that he plays now and seeing, like a guy who's plays a bit of 2K defense where he's like spamming, turbo and trying to just like events create. He's looking for the ball. He's trying to, his arms all over the place. And then you see other times where it's like he's making he's positioned perfectly. You're like, wow. Actually, he's sort of the perfect dimensions you'd want for a guy who can guard 1s, 2s, and like the smaller side of 3s. And so, like, I think that in a lot of ways, you can look at how he is and be like, if there's a rewire, if there's, if there's a buy-in, like you're not looking at just like, I think the worst possible outcome for him is that he is just a scorer. And like, I think that, an inefficient scorer is something that like has value, especially if they get to the free throw line enough.
Mhm.
But seeing him as a guy who's like, no, the upside here is a guy who does the flip side of many of these talking points, where it's like, okay, so if you can get him to buy in all the time on picking spots as a cutter, you can get him to buy in all the time that like that is his most efficient usage, and that when you do those things, like yeah, then like once you've got everybody in foul trouble, like who's going to be guarding you? You know, seventh, eighth man, and you're stronger than them, then we can get you to the ISO stuff. And like I think that he's a guy you kind of have to squint a little bit more because the theory of him is a little bit farther away. But there's moments where he does things where you're like, oh, if this guy was here all the time, we're talking about a far different draft.
100%.
So that is my Josh Christopher potential long-term connector for the Houston Rockets pitch that many people aren't buying, but I think there's something there with the right development and all the way buy-in, and then you can just have the boogie on top of it.
There it is.
All right, so let's jump into these clips.
Okay, so the first one I had,
I actually added in one at the very beginning.
oh, good.
No,
Okay, cool.
I added one. Okay. So for these, I grabbed the full. I grabbed the full possession.
Okay, cool.
Because some of them were like there was a moment that happened earlier that I wanted to throw in.
Awesome.
When I went through them. All right, that was my only note.
Oh no, I appreciate. Okay, cool. Yeah. So this one, I think this is off a missed three. Yeah, I think they reset. And then, yeah. But what I liked was, well, there's two things about that. One is his shot. I didn't realize it has, well, let me comment on that. First on the defensive, I like the fact that like he did have some great awareness, anticipation off of the miss to cut back in, intercept the pass from Anthony, and then, you know, at least try to get it back up. Obviously he missed the layup, but I think that defensive effort, activity, anticipation, especially considering the lapse that would happen later in the game, was really solid. The first thing I noticed, and I'm not by any means a shot doctor, my shot's like Sean Marion, but like it feels like his shot like loads up, not Kevin Martin-esque, but it kind of goes in front of his body in like a circle type thing. Like it's like,
yes, 100%. Okay. So he is a guy who it's sort of a semicircle, but it starts at his opposite hip. So he loads it across his face. It doesn't go like out the way that Lonzo's did, like where Lonzo's went to his shoulder. It goes from his hip over, and there's just moments where you can see his elbow slide, his fingers slide. I think like I did a larger breakdown for Let's Watch Film, and we spent quite a bit of time diagnosing how he picks up for his shots. There are situations where he cannot shoot from. Like you'll notice that he doesn't pick up going to his right.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Because he has 100%. To bring it all the way
100%.
back to his other hip. Like so similar to the issue that Lonzo had, but for him, because he's so much more handily, you'll notice that he'll like have snatches. It'll be open, and then he'll do one more move to bring it back to his left. That's the
yes.
So you're 100% correct in diagnosing it, and I don't think you have to be a shot doctor. It's just that like, oh, this seems like a thing that's biased towards one side. I wonder how it looks when the ball's on the other side. The answer is like, there's some machination necessary.
See, okay, and see, the first thought I thought was like, it's unconventional, but like, okay, remember the old school 2Ks where it wasn't the shot stick, it was like you had to actually master the guy's shot, and like the more pronounced that person's shot was, or usually the more like traditional was, the better was the time. His, I was like, wow, that would be like a weird one to like get right at, you know, the circular like spin at the top. So that was unique there. But the defensive intensity, I did like the fact that he was aware, like right after coming up, you know, obviously doing a little sauce with it, moving around, getting it back, trying to get an advantage. Oh, that one was with him, I like the strength that he had off of absorbing the contact by Anthony, kind of just plowing through him really, and still keeping that body control to rise up. I thought it was a really solid play in terms of just having that kind of one-on-one creation. Mind even then, you see he passes it to kind of make an opening, veers back, got him on his back leg, and then immediately just runs. And as he's rolling, he's already getting up. I really thought that was like solid execution. Yeah,
and if you'll notice on these kind of pickups, do you see how he has like 1 foot much farther in front? I
didn't notice that.
So that's how he counters when he has to decelerate to get to that left hip, where a lot of guys can just catch it flat and go up. The thing that bugs me about this stuff is he didn't have a backup plan. Like with other, like with players who are successful in this archetype, they're sort of, you know, leveraging 3 or 4 different ideas. Like this was like, I'm gonna punk Cole Anthony, you know, just like forearm shiver to the chest. Like if that doesn't work, what's the second option? Because there's not really anything there. He's trying to squeeze water from a stone, and it works in this particular instance. But the process is the point of picking spots of being like, yes, there are circumstances where you should be able to overwhelm when point guards guard you. but where is this second rotation that's going to help you out? Like, where is this alternate choice so that defenses have to, can't box you into just being a guy who takes, these like fairly unthreatening, 9-foot, 12-foot floaters. Like, it's not a shot that breaks a defense.
Definitely no, not at all. Like, I guess you'd be actually fine with that. Oh, so defensive side, he gets kind of caught on the screen, and then he's like, for the moment, I didn't like how he didn't get back. I like how he recovered once the rebound was recovered by the opposition. But right here, he stops, fine. He gets rattled, but then he like is okay. Like, he's not quite selling out to like tagging when he's not quite closing out. And he did that a few times. This is just one that I was like, okay, it's not quite no man's land on defense, but it's like there's a moment where he's just kind of drifting. Then they reset, and then he's right back. And I thought he played solid possession defense for the rest of this spot right here. It was just it was one of a few moments that I wanted to chart where he like that was like the first one of him just kind of stuck.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll say is that similar to a moment that Dalano Banton had earlier, where he clapped his hands because he was frustrated and could have had a steal. If Josh Christopher puts his hands up, this pass doesn't happen. He has his hands down, and it allows this over the top. It's just again, like with rookies, that's going to happen. But just knowing that that's the only way to get a pass through, you just have to have your hands to minimize the easiest route.
Definitely. Wow. Yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing to watch for in rookies in general. Just like the ones who tend to have their hands up all the time tend to just be like smart defenders who make things happen. And it's like, it seems like such an easy thing to do all the time, but it's also obviously like really tiring and maybe like not taught at some levels. But yeah, like it is interesting, like keeping up with which ones do that and which ones don't. I feel like they tend to fall into like pretty distinct categories of like the good defenders tend to do this and the bad ones don't.
Yeah, and I think that the secret is you don't always have to have your hands up, but it's about like sort of thinking about the angle the offense wants and just putting your hand to the most dangerous angle. That's a thing that like the Florida State guys are really good at. So like Pat Williams in his summer league games, it's just like he's just thinking about where the worst possible pass could be, and one of his hands is always there.
Yeah, and Scotty Barnes is the same way.
And again, you don't have to always have your hands up. It's just like, okay, what's the one pass I will get subbed out if my guy makes? And if you have one hand there, you'll always be at least okay. With Josh Giddey this year, we talked a lot about defending for film, which is where you do just enough not to get yelled at. So you're like in you're in the exact right spot. You don't always like, you're not in a stance, you're not pointing, but you're in the general vicinity. You can, stunt it or whatever. And if we can get Josh to there, that's a meaningful defender because of his size, because of his abilities. Like he does have the ability. He is quick twitch enough to get passes he really shouldn't. But he isn't at that court mapping phase where he's like, this is the most dangerous pass. Or go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, asking you, like, is it like anticipation in terms of reps? Is it just like some of anticipation with effort that is kind of getting in there? Because I really couldn't. I mean, I feel like some of it is easy enough to like, okay, you could have moved there, you could have been there. Some of it, like, do you think he just doesn't see it, but it'll come in time? I'm kind of curious about it.
I think it's just, integrating a process into your mind of being like, this is how I do it. Like, I think that the first step is being asked to do that all the time. Like, I mean, what we've talked about with a lot of the guys we talked about is they come from a place that demands that of them. And Josh's priors are that he was a guy who was being asked to score mostly. And so he's never been, I don't want to say held to that standard, but like that's never been the barometer of whether he's playing or not. And in other situations, like if Scotty Barnes didn't put his hand up in a passing lane, like Florida State will yank him. Montverde will yank him for those reasons and those reasons alone. And I think that it's just going to be like an emphasis and instilling a mindset of like, look, this is a thing you have to do every possession. And that by itself goes a really long way.
Wow. Right. So this is the same. Okay.
Yep.
I remember which play this was here. Oh no, I think this was
yeah, this is a 3-piece where you have the DHO, then a chase down, and
the getting back, and then even here, so he like what was that defensively? I looked and I was like, I replayed it a couple times ago. Okay, he gets up, like the offensive side, I get it. He kind of had an advantage. He just Tried to absorb contact still, like you said, left hand depend on that, so I missed it. Comes back, and then he's like kind of picking up the ball handler, just makes a weird stab at it, gets beat, and then he's like kind of there, can't get the steal, kind of floats, just still looking at him while the guy he decides to pick up is rushing past him, and he behind the play on all counts. I don't know. Again, I thought that was like awareness, or I wrote, I'm not really sure what he was doing there defensively.
Yeah, to me, that's just that's sort of the idea of like he had the intention of pressuring the defender, but he didn't like do it past the initial moment of like this is token pressure, and then it wasn't like, okay, so I reached, which is, if you reach on your first moment, that's fine. You have to sprint for your life and get in front of him to slow down the possession, and it's just like when you've committed to a pathway defensively, you have to do it the whole way.
Gotcha.
Didn't do it, and then you fall through. But yeah, it's sub ideal.
Definitely. Probably a few of these I had were on his defensive possessions of him just kind of there. I think this was another one of that. If you're like looking like he's kind of trying to pick up a guy, he starts to like drift to the corner, and then he sees the ball and he's drifting kind of back. It's just like he didn't pay. He didn't pay exactly because it wasn't his guy, I guess. But like in that same zone, he's not quite there. They're not playing a zone, at least that I saw. He just decided to kind of pick up an area, but not quite sell out to that.
Yeah, I mean, he's doing help side where it's like ball moves, you move, which is normal if you have corner. But also like he's not actually doing that. Like it's not it's like because he's not in a stance. He's walking this whole time. So I mean, like I think that like when I talk about him like being a meaningful defender and having like ideal defensive tools, like we're also talking about like their just instruction and mindset things and just like expectation things that like just are going to be a kind of difficult growth curve. Because he can also just like do stuff at point of attack. You're like, oh, okay, that would be very useful.
True. And see, I credit this play for being a good play. You got to be on the screen. He stays after, gets from behind, pokes the ball away, still stays after, gets the steal, and then he does that.
Like the first half is like it's legitimately very good. Like even the technique is very good. Like he's trying to blind trail where you wait for the defender to cross the poke out. He gets a little bit of a blind switch, but and then is able to get a deflection. Again, he has an option to bail, doesn't. He's sitting back down again. Screens are coming. He sort of botches that, but then he reattaches. Like it's again the idea, the broad idea is there. Even that I really like. I'm not gonna lie to you. I really like that. Like just because it's like there's something there. Like I appreciate that he's court mapping offensively enough to know like it's a one-on-one. Is the pass poorly placed? Yes. Absolutely, yeah.
But, yeah,
but like this isn't one of those where he's like, I have no idea what you're doing. It's like, oh, I get the idea. You just didn't execute properly.
Yeah.
But,
true.
But I mean, like this is the defensive ideas here of like a havoc driven ball handler who can close gaps in a specific way, like especially against guards. Like that's very interesting. Like because like Cole Anthony is an NBA guard. Like Cole Anthony is a former lottery pick, and Jacob has very little problem bothering him.
No,
and closing down the spaces after his handle.
Absolutely. And that's the one I laughed at the play because like the ending, but like the fact that it was like again there was moments of him actually using what you can kind of see him doing on the defensive end. I really enjoyed that. So this was a play where it was kind of like the best and the worst. He kind of ISOs. He's looking for a shot, but he's trying to stay one way. Cole Anthony's playing good defense, but I mean, we all know he's not going back to the other hand. So he's like trying to position it to drive one way. And really it's off of, I wrote his teammate's name down, like the movement of the off-ball shooter to kind of get that shot and a nice pass right in his pocket to get there. But it was like, I like the pass, but like the fact that he was like holding the ball for that long only to get back to that one hand. And that there was another play of that where he's driving headlong. There is no, and you could tell off the bat, there's no counter. Like he got bailed out from there, and I think that was his 5th 3 in 6 attempts at that point. Like he was hot, so it was a perfect possession. And then right here, we knew where it was going. And he wasn't switching. He didn't even try.
And this is the ones where it's like there's like this is a like in theory this is what you want him to be, like a downhill guy who is one move and a hard Euro step. But like the thing is that he didn't like the other part of it is that the defense has to not know what's coming next. And once he in and outed, like there wasn't, there wasn't a believable counter because it was like he was not going to make that left hand swing pass to the corner.
Yeah. And even that stutter he did was kind of early that we knew, he was already done with it by the time he was still going. So, and then Anthony just there, boom.
Yeah, and I mean, it gets called a block, but like the fact that this should have been an easy win for him, he should have been able to sell middle a little bit harder and then just like late Euro and then force another rotation. But we're in situations where, I think that because he's so worried about beating like that first defender and getting a win at point of attack, he's not really thinking about manipulating second line of defenders. And that's the thing that like I really want to focus on is that he has the potential to be a guy who's a huge advantage creator, especially second side. But he has to come with the mindset of like, I'm always going to be able to beat my first guy when I move quickly, when I move strong, when I make a move that is appropriate for the situation. But in each of the moves we've seen, the issue hasn't been the guy, like the point of attack guy. It's been that these backside defenders also know what's happening, and that they are not responding to this downhill threat because like, oh, I know where he's going to be, and that is the thing. It's not like, oh, he makes a rough read downhill. That's not concerning. It's that he wasn't able to sell alternatives, so a defense, even in a summer league setting, was able to load up.
Wow, definitely. And then I think I had another possession similar on this next one where, granted, good defense by Cole Anthony. Well, not this play, but the next one coming up where he kind of keeps him. He's sitting on that left hand, like he's forcing. He's gonna go back, and he clearly is not comfortable doing that. So he ends up just by the process getting himself isolated with a more favorable matchup, and then but we know why he did it. Because like that's the side of the floor he ended up. He wasn't going to drive back that way, but it was almost like even then he's not looking to get like he's clearly ISO focused. He gets himself forced there, and even right here he kind of gets it cleared out, and there's no the time it takes you to say reset. He's already pulling up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that jumps out to me here is that like this possession is sort of poison fruit to the inability to get to the rescreen off the twist. So like he gets it like so far we're good. He sees the screen, he goes behind the back. He now has set up Cole Anthony really hard. And he's about to twist. We twist. They should just be able to walk into the rescreen. He's stronger. He's, the ball's in his right hand. He has the ability to put a hip. And he just like kind of fumbles it. And, now he's moving backwards. And he never gets to that screen. Not really. Like, because this isn't really an action because they're able to just funnel it because we have help right here, so it's not threatening. And that's the stuff that like, again, with him, I'm not worried about him eventually beating a guy in ones. It's the like, can we get it so that 2 or 3 people have to respond to every Josh Christopher action? And to me, that's the definition of him picking spots. It's not like, oh, we'll find the right spot to let him cook. It's every time that you touch the ball, it should take 3 to beat you. Like it should take 3 dudes to stop you. And he has the tools to do it. And he's putting himself in the right situations. But then, there's a thing that goes wrong or, when it goes wrong, instead of being like resilient in that moment and putting a shoulder and walking into that pick, he's just like, okay, now we got to go. Like for plan A didn't work. ISO. And I think that just having other options, just like the patience to be like, okay, hey, we'll figure this possession out. Like I can always do this later is the stuff that I'm really excited for.
Definitely. Yeah. All right. Trying to remember this play. This play, I think this was him just he carried it for a second, but he gets just in rise up too. Like he was the shot, like in terms of he knew where he wanted to go. Mind you, the one thing I wrote was like confidence, decisiveness isn't an issue when he's like really set. Like the minute he kind of gets, after that, he goes right into his move and like the hand. Like I feel like there's the type of kind of off the like. I feel like the archetype and him being able to just become that kind of like guy in the NBA where it's like basically it was college, but like in moments, okay, just get a bucket type thing. Like he has, if he's able to kind of get to his right. We saw the 3 ball. I didn't put any of them here, but he knocked down a couple of those, and then I love the separation, I guess, on that, or at least the shot profile in there, and like having that shot,
Yeah, I mean, like ideally, you'd want to go to like a T-Mac here, right? And instead of but he doesn't ever really do it going to his right because like he can't pull that. Like it's not that's because of that gather point. So he has to always come back to that left, and that's where we see him pull from.
I think also the problem is like he's not even looking anywhere other than at his defender.
Mm-hmm.
And so, defenses are going to start to just play him for the shot. And he's going to have to at least start looking towards his teammates.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I think that even in this game, we've already kind of seen that, like, the Magic are just like, we're staying home.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, the sort of like worst case scenario for an isolation score is a team just being like, yeah, we'll live with it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that it was just a moment where he just kind of, I don't know, it felt Westbrook-esque to me in that way. Like the play, he was kind of helping out, but then the play was like clearly still going, and he'd already committed to, well, we're gonna crash the boards, which is fine. I just felt like, especially the guy he had knocked. Well, once they switched.
Well, yeah, but they're in zone here, so like,
yeah,
because like, so he does have sort of confusing responsibility, and like also everybody is like dealing with 2-9 for the first time. So like he is no, he's not in the paint for that long, but like it is a concern where it's like, hey, don't stay in the paint, and he's trying to react to Franz, and you can kind of see him have a moment where he's like, oh, that's going to be a shake, and then he gambles on that idea of that shake, and that's kind of what leads him out of the position in my ideas. But I mean, like obviously with zones, every zone is a little bit different where you don't know where the assignment handoff is, but because this is a post up, like he technically is responsible for that whole side now.
So yeah, okay. So and I think that's the question to ask you in terms of his gambling defensively. How much of that do you think for him is like already knowing and like anticipating, or him just like, oh, I have a feeling it might go here? You know what I mean? Like some, where you
20-80, in my opinion. It's mostly him trying to make a play, which like again, it's an instinct that not everybody has. There's dudes who do not like, they know they have a play and they just like don't want to make it. And like those guys exist in their own brand of frustrating, but like I think that he's trying to make a play more often than a play is available right now.
They're not. Gotcha, for sure. This one, I mean, honestly, toward the end, I'd already had a lot of clips of him kind of in that spot. This was just him kind of, I mean, you see, like he's just drifting back and not really. Again, like it's weird to kind of. I even wrote like I don't want to nitpick on him because some of it you see, and there was moments where he really got in and dug in defensively. That's okay, it's there. And there are other moments where, I mean, how much you take away from the fact that you just he's kind of picking up the ball handler, kind of picking up a guy, and somehow ends up taking up the rear as they get a dunk.
I mean, for me, the biggest thing that I see over and over again is like people are comfortable helping off of him, which makes his usage much more difficult. Like like if you're going to be like the difference between like a Cam Thomas is like you cannot help off Cam Thomas because he's too good of a shooter. But with Josh, his usage is going to be so much more based on tilted catches, where he needs to catch the ball going downhill. Because teams are going to be able to. I mean, you mentioned Westbrook earlier, and it's sort of the same idea of being like, if you can't, if you struggle to shoot, and teams will overload against that, you have to find a new way of tilting a defense when you're off ball. And I just think that like if over and over again teams are helping off this much, like him spotting up in the corner isn't necessarily like offensively helpful. Like he doesn't hustle back, and then takes a poor angle on the screen, and the possession falls apart. But I think the theory of like how you build an offense around a guy who like does have scoring gravity can do this is the one I added, where like they needed like this play doesn't work. It's a pretty like flat bus who just says like, okay, give me the ball, jab, fire.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
Right, and it's like it's again out of that left hip, notice again and again, everything goes from that left side. But like this is the stuff that he can do where it's like, yeah, it's also like partially I think what causes some of these problems is that because he's so like he's always been able to just solve problems with like, okay, I have a solution. I don't think he's quite at the point where he's like, oh, he's processing through some of this stuff and he's just like, oh, I know the solution. Catch, jab, fire.
Oh, okay. So he is like he knows he's the guy in that like, okay, break glass, like, yeah, I mean, like call the cavalry, I am the cavalry type moment.
Yeah, like do you remember when you stopped being able to do multiplication tables in your head? Like there was a moment where it was like the old way stopped working. They're like, yeah, what's 619 times 72? You're like, well, hang on, no, you can't do that. I was like, I'm like 9 times 9, no problem. But like, what do you mean? What is this new thing you're doing? It's like, I think that we've just reached a point where like the style of thought or the style of processing that he's had up to this point, like has reached a point where like it just kind of won't work. And so now we're reaching a point of like, okay, so what do you add on to that? Like, how are you going to adapt from here? And like some of this stuff is going to help because like if you have a guy who can jab and fire from 3 as a wing, like that's very valuable.
Mhm.
But that can't be the barometer of how successful your like lineups are in the NBA. From a like 6'4" wing. That's a very difficult thing if they're not if they're on the streakier side and not on like the knockdown shooter side or knockdown shot creator.
For sure.
Anyway, sorry for adding that one. I just as I was
Oh,
flipping
no,
through,
I'm
I was like,
glad
I was worried it was going to end up being like a thing where it felt a little negative. So I was like, I want to put some good hardcore shit on this one.
I'm honestly glad you, like, I was thinking when I was talking about the threes, I'm like, darn, I wish I had clipped the 3 in there. So thank you. Yeah. And I found myself, even there, I found myself getting a little there defensively. And that one wasn't that bad, I guess, looking at, like, he drifted off, kind of recovered.
Yeah, he
it
closed
felt
down the
weird.
space. I thought he closed down the space. Like that's
Yeah.
the thing where it's like, yes, he does fall asleep on the secondary action.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see that like there's a space that he should not be able to really close down as much, and he does. And you're like, well, if we can just get him to not be, if he's a half step less out of position, he probably blocks the shot or gets enough of a contest and it doesn't come close.
True.
And the question is like, how long will it take to get that half step there? Will it take a year? Will it take 2 years? Will it take 3 years? But like, that's the ability to close down space is valuable. Because this is the stuff. This is what we've been looking for the whole time. Look what happens when he draws 4.
Okay. Funnel.
Suddenly things get easier. The decision making gets easier. The obvious stuff, like what was before kind of a cloudy decision, is now like there's a dude wide open in the corner. You don't have to think about it at all. You've created rotations. Beautiful basketball occurs.
There it is. Yeah, that was a nice pass. But yeah, that's the clips I had for Christopher. I had a nice follow I really wanted to get, but ESPN cut to it like right when he was kind of going into the shot. I was really annoyed by that because like I realized he was getting part of the action because they were like closing in on one of the interviews they do, and they zoomed out and he like was already elevating, like nice follow. I'm like, well, I never really saw it, but like thank you.
Dude, ESPN killed some of these games. Like I was watching the Raptors Warriors game, and like I swear for a whole quarter they just panned on Draymond and Steph, and it's like, yeah, we know they're there. Okay, show us the game, please. Talk about the game, please, just a little bit.
So on the
It is
stream, you
wild.
can't see it because I framed it a certain way, but they can see it in the. We are zoomed in on half a screen right now. So this is the other half, and to the left, you can see a little bit of. I think this is Kenyon Martin Sr. talking, and it was like this for about 4 minutes of this game. The worst is the like. I mean, I do this for I do this a lot now, and I do micro skills, which is getting when they do cutaways, it'll give you like the normal angle and then 2 alternate angles. And ESPN Big Monday loves to have this splashy graphic that takes up half the screen. And so sometimes I'm like, yes, 2 good angles back to back. I get to tape this. It goes in the pile, and then just like this humongous graphic that's like the shape of Iowa comes in. They're like cross state battle, and I was like, I just got to saw what perfect up straight down footwork was going to be. And you decide to put this terrible Iowa graphic on top of it. So yeah, no one is more sensitive to video production, I think, than me at this point. I feel like I just want to go through and thank all the good ones personally. Just be like, you've helped me so much on this journey.
Yeah.
Wow. So I feel like we got a good mixed bag from Josh, where we're like there's clear moments of like, okay, there's something here, and you can see the development curve that's necessary. Where is everybody at with how this looks in the first couple of years?
I mean, I'm oddly enough after watching all of it, I kind of like that. I'm kind of high on him. I feel like on this team, like there's going to be a lot of warts defensively, but I really have. I mean, he's on a team that's developing. Like, he's going to get a lot of reps. And I think that there will be some direction. I'm just high on Steven Silas, the coach, like in terms of trying to rein some of his wilder inhibitions in, and like also like focusing maybe on having a stronger defensive concept. Well, Houston's not gonna have that, but like something in there, I think will be more helpful in him trying to work on development. I don't think it's gonna look great this upcoming season. Maybe even not like so much. I think it might be another off season, maybe another summer league where you get to see some of the stuff picked up over the year, where he first comes to grips with the fact that maybe some of the shots that he was able to get into a lot easier in college, like you talked about in terms of the ease to go to the left hand to the right, That's going to be kind of a shock when you're playing role defenders that are just going to be they're just going to eat it up. And I think having enough reps on that will force him to kind of diversify a little further, gain some more experience. And then maybe we're looking at a totally different conversation. Well, not a totally different conversation, but like a much different conversation in terms of what he's applied or making better use of his physical gifts come next season.
I think he's the type of guy that's like going to excel when he plays with good players, and when he doesn't have to think so much, and when he can just kind of when the game's simplified for him, it gets like a lot easier for a lot of guys. And I think he's the type of guy that really kind of would flourish in that type of simplified kind of role where everything comes to him a lot easier. So I think that's going to be hard considering Houston doesn't have a lot of good players for that. But once they do, I think you're going to see him probably play a lot better than the last couple what you've seen from him so far, which has been some promising parts. But you just know that around better players, he's going to be a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was jumping Marco Ronnie and something PD had already said as far as him being like a second side guy, like at least to start, maybe the first 2 years, I think he's like someone that you are like, you don't give him the ball and say, cook, like create kind of thing. Like I'm thinking he'll have his own, like, in the shot clock kind of package or whatever. But like for the most part, you're running plays to get him in ideal situations. And then maybe he'll grow into a spot where he creates those situations.
That's what I was going to say. I think he could be really effective as a second side guy pretty soon. Obviously, like you said, Houston doesn't have a lot of primary guys, but, playing off Jalen Green, I think he could be effective pretty soon. But in terms of being a primary, I'm not sure if I see the path yet, but yeah.
I think that a disconnect that I had in this draft cycle was sort of people who saw him as like Nick Young, in terms of like seeing the move, seeing the creation style, and I never kind of got there because like Nick was a different type of athlete. Like Nick was much more of a glider, and Josh is much more like a football style athlete, where like it's power. Like he's not as it's not to the levels of Ant-Man, but like I imagine if you put them through like P3 stuff, it would be fairly similar, just in terms of their profiles. But then the guy who I'm like really curious to see if you can kind of use him in the same ways, it's going to require shooting development, which I think you could say for literally every rookie. Is like how Eric Gordon was used during the first like 7 years of his career, and like Eric Gordon, before the injuries, obviously like had more on-ball juice. But the idea that like the smaller role you gave him, and the less likely that he saw primary defenders, the more there just wasn't a dude to guard him. Like he was too quick for like the wing size guys. He was too strong for the guard size guys, and for the players who were for players who didn't like close out great, like not the super rangy guys who just shoot over the top. Like he had enough. He had something kind of for every style of like secondary defender, and I think that is sort of the idea that like Josh can work on. And also like Eric Gordon was never going to be a phenomenal passer, but Eric Gordon always generated advantage, and it got to the point where he could hit weak side skips, and it was a bit laborious, but there was a value in a dude who you didn't have a natural matchup for, and once he got a second defender to rotate, could make you pay. And I think that is certainly somebody that I would like feed a lot of tape to Josh Christopher. Just being like, also like Eric Gordon didn't need a ton. I think that like comparing him to the Nick Youngs and Austin Rivers is sort of a disservice to like that he doesn't have to play this way. That like there is. I hate to use the term like winning basketball player, but like there is a player who's scaled down who does like some of these things occasionally, but is mostly focused on really punishing people with the physical stuff, and being unable to really find a perfect matchup for him. Because like we saw this, like they threw a couple different dudes at Josh, and like none of them were the exact right fit, especially if teams have to close out. A thought, I don't know if that bounces for any of you guys. I mean, that's not really an archetype we see that often. In terms of like guys shaped like that, because again, another dude who's sort of a football athlete in a bowling ball.
Yeah, no, I like that. Now, yeah, I like that. Like, not compliment direct away, but like the way he can develop, 100%.
Yeah, I don't want him making decisions, but also like if I was Houston, I think maybe I look at everything from like a Raptor centric mindset. But if I was Houston, I'd be trying to hone the defense, and everything that comes offensively is a bonus because you see like in terms of the clips we just saw, I think the defensive flashes are more eye opening maybe than the offensive stuff. If you can hone that in 48 minutes or like into he's always aware, he's always active, he's closing out well consistently, like then he can be an impact guy pretty soon on that end.
Oren, you've hit upon my favorite question. I think a good way to close out. So we have a guy who we've seen has a proclivity to want to like balloon his usage. What is the best way of developing him, knowing that like the G League would probably be a place where it would be harder to shrink his role? Do you put him on a floor with a bunch of other rookies, which is always going to be like less paint by numbers and more watercolors, where it's like people are. It's just not really precise when you develop multiple rookies at once. But in a G League setting where you may have a little bit more definition, and you can focus more into like one or two guys. But there's going to be, he's probably going to be able to do a lot of the on-ball stuff at a pretty high level in the G League. He's a guy who, like, I'm not certain the best way to develop him, where a lot of times, like, you play him spot minutes in a small spot, like in a small spot in the NBA club, or you play him a bunch of minutes in the G League. And I don't really have an answer that I feel is natural, and I think that it's going to be a bit of each, which also feels like a cop out.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense though. I agree with you. Like when you ask, like, because the Greek, I mean, you get more time, I imagine, to flourish and kind of maybe enhance some of the strengths you already have, a little more freedom than you would in spot minutes, where you're getting just that. You'll have minutes to like maximize effectiveness in certain ways, but like you're not getting the kind of development you would there. To kind of focus on your weaknesses, but also kind of like have a studio space to kind of explore your strengths. So,
but we've seen that like with him, we kind of want specificity.
Yeah.
So it's like exploring the studio space. Like I know what that looks like. I've seen that for a number of years now. Like I'm very familiar with that prospect. I don't mean that like that's a thing that has been a thing that has been his development arc up to this point. Is that he's been much higher usage and in roles that are broadly defined by the players around him, not necessarily by how he plays. It's fit in around him. And I'm uncertain how to, on a team that has multiple rookies, get him into a role where you're like, hey, this is the specificity we would really love for you. Because on a good team, that's really easy. Like Gerald Wallace in the Kings is a great example of that. Being like, hey, you're going to come in, for 4 minutes, you're going to try to do 3 windmills. You're going to pick everybody up 94 feet, and then, we're going to be up 30. Like, that's very clear. It's the 04 Kings. You're young, you can't get that PT, and you see that role develop. On a younger team, that's so much harder because you're going to be experimental with everybody else.
Yeah, that is unique. And then, like, where do you slot him in, like, alongside, like again, your Jalen Green and stuff, and like, oh, you're like with the role. Are you okay? We got other guys who can put the ball in the basket better. Like, you're focused on deep. Like, how do you even? I'm not gonna lie.
Fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's a really good question because I feel like he's gonna play with the big team just because they don't have that much talent.
Yeah.
But he like. I think regardless of if he plays in the G League or the NBA, they just need to hold him accountable on the defensive end. And then, like, I don't mind if he's getting more reps on ball for, a couple months in the G League, as long as the defense is, I guess, the priority. Because once the defense comes, then you can play in the NBA, and then you can learn in the NBA.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. I don't want to say like unprecedented, but it's sort of the really like in between situation that the NBA has not been exposed to a ton, because it's pretty uncommon for a team to have 3 dudes who can all do this sort of style of creation at the same time. Like when we generally think of teams that have multiple young creators, they're different. Like even Sexton and Garland are different, or even you think of Okoro's passing, like it's fundamentally different. Like I think if you just like looked at the second spectrum for those for Kevin Porter Jr., for Jalen Green, and for Josh, and you scrambled around and just said like, oh, guess who's who, and it was actually a blend of the 3, it wouldn't look like a weird mix. You'd be like, oh, this guy there's a lot of these hardworking jumpers here. So it it is going to be a thing that I really pay attention to is how the lineups work, how the play calls work, how like I really want to hear like as many Silas interviews as possible because I think this is a fascinating job to have. The 3 jobs he's kind of had since he took the Houston job. The first one with Harden, the second one, finishing out the year. Also, John Wall's on this team.
I know.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned that at all, but like also John Wall's on this team. I don't mean that. Like I forget that John Wall's on this team because I'm like, wow, these 3 guys, how are they going to figure it out? And I'm like, oh yeah, there's also a dude who like needs to play all the time as well. So yeah, Houston is going to be fascinating in 30 different directions. Is it okay if we segue?
Well, yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Being able to make it.
Thanks.
So from one extremely fascinating player to another, in terms of situations and in terms of, I didn't have a read on Jalen Johnson at all in this draft. I think that like I came to a point where I understood all of the viewpoints. There was when he was a senior in high school, he was age eligible for the 2020 draft, and I was like, I would probably take him top 3. Midway through his senior year, I was like, if he can get up here, there hadn't been the Duke year, which was extremely mixed and hard to parse out. And in the year, it just I didn't have a great feel for where his jumper was, like even what player he was, right? Because he has the great games versus lower level comp. He has middling showings across the ACC with like 2 good games and 2 bad games. It's like, okay, so we kind of just have a full assortment of randomness, and you can draw the through line however you want. So I kind of tried to treat this summer league setting as like getting to know Jalen Johnson again, a player that I had seen as a top 3 pick and had fallen for a myriad of different reasons. But like I also can't hold anybody for having any opinion about Jalen Johnson because my opinion was just like question marks, like not about who he was as a person, just like what his game actually was at the moment he was drafted. So the first thing that I was looking at is defining his passing process. A concern that I think is present for all tall creators is, are they good passers because they're tall, or are they big passers who are tall? And at times I feel that he is guilty of hunting rondo assists rather than processing out of possession. So he will wait for the pass that is an assist rather than holding each layer of a defense accountable. With Cade, who I think is one of the better like young guys I've ever seen at this, where you can just watch him rotate through each person and be like, okay, you're supposed to be at the nail, you're not at the nail, you're a step off. Okay, if I look over, you're going to run back, then the next guy has to rotate over, and you can just watch him churn full possessions at a time. This is his preferred way of creation. And with Jalen, I just feel like he goes downhill, he waits for the one that is best, he drops it off. And I wanted to see how that changed. I mean, it's also interesting that this is a guy who didn't really play a senior year of high school, played half a year of college, and now is in a summer league setting. So how am I supposed to use this data? Again, this is a fascinating time for Jalen Johnson. The second thing is feel for opportunistic scoring. I never saw him as a straight up primary. The idea is that like I want him to make a lot of decisions, but not necessarily like handle the ball a ton, sort of similar to the idea of Giddy. And I wanted to see how he handled being on a team with Sharif Cooper, who was going to make a whole bunch of decisions, have the ball in his hands, and there's also Skylar Mays on this team, and see how he could process the game, see from an off-ball position, and also like knowing that he's not going to get 30 pick and rolls in this game, so he has to feel out cuts and flashes and things like that. And that's an entirely different feel and understanding of the court than pick and roll or being an on-ball guy. The third thing is engagement level. For some people, summer league is a coronation. Like Tyrese Maxey was out here just working on stuff, working on side steps, and like you could see he was having fun because to him this was just like, these people can't guard me. I'm here to serve up and we're good to go. Other people think that they're you can see that they're not 100% trying. They don't want to get hurt. They're just out here to get a feel for it. Johnson has a reputation for kind of being a guy who plays to the level of competition. So he would get up for the games versus Scotty Barnes, but maybe would be a little bit sleepier on a team with 3s and 4 stars. And also, like, this is a guy who basically got told that he didn't like basketball for like 6 months. Like, this is a dude who got thrown under the bus publicly, and I wanted to see what his first time back wearing an NBA uniform, playing some of the teams in front of hundreds of scouts and the whole basketball or the whole NBA apparatus felt about that. Because I mean, there's a certain way of just being like, I'll see you in the regular season. And there's another way of seeing it being like, oh, I'm giving everybody here 45. That's what's now happening. So yeah, that was a full blown question mark. The fourth thing is what is needed to be a small ball five. This is a broader question in terms of like what skills are needed, and also like specifically how does that apply to Jalen? Because on one hand, you think, okay, he's explosive. He's about the right size. He has solid long arms. He's a good processor of the game. But is that enough? And is the specificity of his athleticism what matters? And from my memory, he wasn't a guy who got vertical that well. And I wanted to see if I didn't think it went that great too, as a small ball five. And the last one is jumper progression. It was a full rebuild the last time I saw it. The hands were like doing a weird like claw thing on the releases, and like the wrist snapped, and I just wanted to see where it was. Again, like normally there'd be more insight to these kind of things, but this is much more of a like a re-getting to know somebody. And what I love is that in a lot of in this game, if you have a guy who maybe struggles a little bit with engagement level or with application, what do you do when the ball tips off? So this is the first play of the game, and they run a handoff into a backdoor that's a lot. Just to be like, hey, touch the rim, put two in. Let's get your motor running hot. And obviously, having a guy like Sharif who can really throw a lob makes this great. But to me, this is the ideal way of making sure that like Greg didn't have the same problems with motor, but like this is how Texas Titans started every AAU game, was they ran a pick and roll that actually was a back cut for Greg Brown that would be a left-handed lob from Cade, just to be like, Greg Brown, let's turn your motor up. And like that's a great way to get your forward who has some of these issues. He is he's still a guy who wants to process at a high level. The second he touches the ball, his eyes are immediately up. When shots go up, he looks to the rim, but not for box outs, which is a bit concerning as a small ball five. If he's, you'll see like sometimes he has Jordan Bell on the floor, sometimes they have multiple bigs on the floor. When he's the only big, there's a much different level of effectiveness of this grab and go stuff. To me, that says like a 4 straight out. But when he gets it, it's court mapping. It's counting all the defenders and trying to find any advantage immediately. If it's through a pass, it's through a pass. But he will just quickly put the ball on the deck and just try to be a freight train. This leads to Sharif Cooper foul, but the process here is pretty good. As an off-ball guy, he's still learning how to drop. You can see he wants to make these rotations. He ends up getting a block on this play, but then also like doesn't go and box out in a lineup that desperately needs a box out. Again, we were even early. Like I could have clipped 15 out of just like this first quarter because again, this is I think this is probably one of the most amounts of NBA players for a game. This Sox game, which was a ton of fun. And you got the full Jalen Johnson experience in the first 8 minutes. You can see with the drop. I don't feel great that he would prevent this particular lob. The athleticism to just pop out of backpedaling is a specific type of athleticism. And judging from the guy that we saw take the first alley, he is a guy who jumps best out of locomotion, not just like a straight up and down, which is not an athleticism that's particularly suited to the five, especially if you're not like overwhelmingly strong. And while he is a bigger guy, he's just not going to bulk out. And if you're not extremely springy vertically in a phone booth and you're not super strong, you need to have great technique, and the technique is okay. This pass should be something he deflects. He's not positioned correctly to take it away. He rotates up rather than out, and then he lurks enough to get a block instead of immediately finding a box out. Ball goes off the glass, and Paul Reed, who like is just built to dominate these settings where there's not 5 NBA players on the court. It's just like one of those things where, like some guys, like Marvin Bagley's this way too. Like if the talent's not at a certain level, just like the way that he plays is automatic points.
They're monsters.
Yeah. It's not an indictment on like, it's just their play style is so suited to being like, if you don't have NBA tools, this will not go well. He's confidently taking these jumpers, and he took 3 in this game. I think he went 50% overall for summer league across 4 games. I think it's like not 10 attempts, but all of them look confident. He's no longer doing the claw thing, and he took them on a variety of stuff. It's 42%. I'm tripping. So yeah, he must have gone like 4 for 9 or something. But like we're good. This is literally the next possession. Catch and shoot.
Wow.
We do have some segmentation on the jumper. You can see that the legs and the court do not connect. That's where you get this weird leg kick. And then, accordingly, the arms flare out. So again, it's not a total rebuild, which wouldn't be expected in 8 months or so. But it looks cleaner. The problem area of the touch in the hands and just getting a consistent release seems to have been solved. And expecting a dude like this to have full energy transfer is probably a little bit much, but it looks fine. I would just like a little bit more sitting down. He's still shooting through the front side of his body. Cade has the same issue. They use him a lot as the screener in Sharif pick and rolls, which is really great, and he likes to do this stuff. The opportunistic scoring, the flashes, the hunting for offensive rebounds, it's all downhill for him. He's not a guy who's like flashing and holding to catch it and finish their contact, but he loves to immediately appear in a spot. He tracks the ball well. This is the stuff that I wanted to see him just like making points out of nowhere. And in transition on putbacks, on cuts, that stuff I thought performed really well. This is sort of where like I would say the more difficult issues occur. In that he doesn't. This to me is a pass of last resort. Both of the passes he has in this possession aren't good process, and they're things that like he just waited on a defense, and eventually they forced him into, or they goaded him into a decision rather than processing forward, like reading everybody. He also picked Rajon Tucker to do this too, who's like the wrong one. Like he's absolutely the wrong guy to try to pick on the like probably the most athletic dude in the gym, and maybe the most athletic dude maybe the most athletic guy outside of Jalen Green at Summer League. So I think that this sort of speaks to the understanding how he passes. I think it's probably closer to like how Ben Simmons approaches things, where like Ben had like the fantastic Summer League where he's throwing dimes, but we've kind of seen that like that's not actually how he sees the game. It's that like he kind of has a map of like where certain cutters are and will throw them, but he's not like churning each expectation of a defender. That's why that never fully translated. As a perimeter guy, it's fine. He similar to Josh will just like roam and stab randomly. It's like we saw Josh do this too, where he just like pops into passing lanes. We'll take a couple of steps wrong, take weird closeouts. To me, this is just like what teenagers and 20-year-olds do on defense, more than anything. And I think for him being a technician is going to be incredibly important. Given his swing. Again, I think they're going to spam this middle pick and roll, or not. Not the possession I thought of. Yep, and here we have jump passes being a problem. Does this look like our boy, Mr. Banton?
It does.
Do you want to know what the thing that also does? See that right there? That's a man panicking. In the same way with Banton, where he had that like where he almost touched the ground. He jumped, and there was this hammer that was supposed to happen, and he's like, "Oh, it'll be there." Instead of like reading what was actually happening, he pre-jumps knowing that there's supposed to be this hammer on the weak side. And this guy does not set it really. Like what?
There's nothing there. There's no connection.
It's really easy. You put the hammer on the last name and like, it's not like Springer's a small guy, but you couldn't find him. And like ultimately, he gets bailed out because like I think it's Heidegger gets to the corner eventually on his own and Springer like doesn't sniff it out. But he's not looking anywhere else. He's not reading that like Sharif might shake, which is certainly like a thing that people will do. Is if you set up a hammer on this side, you'll have the same a similar action or like a crack back onto this side as defenses overload. Instead, he's just staring at these two components rather than reading the totality of the defense, and almost goes really poorly. And so to me, this speaks to like the manner of processing. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. It's just that this isn't necessarily a guy you want to do what Sharif is doing. Where it's like Sharif will just be like, okay, you're wrong. This is how I'm going to manipulate all of you into getting what I want. That's not how Jalen is processing this. It's like, I have an action that I know is going to happen. I'm going to watch it and read it. Does that make sense? Am I being too hard on this?
I think, another guy that like is not like creating as much as like, it's not having a run for it, but he knows that he's a cog that can make some passing, but like is only making out of these already like pre-existing options. Like he's not going to create another option. Is that kind of what it's kind of getting at?
Yeah, it's that he's not going to like manipulate everything. Like he's not like he didn't move Isaiah Joe. He could have, but he didn't. Where like he didn't throw in head fakes. It's that like he's seizing on like the idea of advantage, knowing that there's going to be this hammer on the weak side, which is almost always there. Instead of manipulating multiple people to guarantee that there were options, he went towards the okay, we have this hammer or the slip. Instead of like we'll watch Sharif on some of these possessions, just like tinker with how he wants to run pick and rolls, tinker with how a help side defender is going to be aligned to make sure he gets a specific angle.
I get that. Yeah. So it's like option A is open. He passed option A.
Yep.
Option A is open. Option C breaks free. He passed option A. Like, okay. So,
and then here we have as a 5, we get a pretty rough pick and roll sequence from Jordan Bell here. There's no way that this pass should get through. This is a shove as a screen. Like it's like absolutely nothing. It's barely a ram screen. And then the second one over here, Jordan Bell allows this. And the one thing in the situation that you're taught is that you never step up, you step sideways. And he steps up and then just like kind of doesn't have an interest in getting vertical. Which like, sure, I understand you're not keeping Paul Reed from doing this, especially with his style of athleticism. But as a 5, this is a straight up and down. He knows that he doesn't have that kind of straight up and down pop. What I call like phone booth athleticism. And so it's like, yeah, I'm just going to like give the light reach by, which like if you're going to do that, just don't do it, because if they call a foul, you wasted a foul getting dunked on. Just get out of the way. But yeah, it's a concern that they'll be able to put him in like dunker spot actions. Chop for Mays, and this is the opportunistic stuff that we're showing us. Reads the weak side defender, disappears. Like you can see at this point, like this is more like this is processing, but it's not manipulating. You can see that he's sort of like leaning, waiting for the exact moment that looks there, and the second that he looks back, now he's back on ball, and Jalen's gone, and all it takes is 2 steps, and just like that right there is also how he reads like pick and rolls, is that he's just like waiting for that one trigger rather than trying to manipulate all 5 guys. I don't think I put a ton of the Maxi pick and roll stuff, him shooting, though there's a bunch of it in this game. Here we have another rim protection issue. This should be a punch, even for like a John Collins type. John Collins has a bit more 2-foot pop, and I'm not trying to dunk on Jalen Johnson, but just he lets Tyrese Maxey get this corner and then get a reasonable finish, and these are just things that can't happen as a 5. But as a 4, like sure, that's totally okay. It's just that like off 2 feet, you'd want your center to be able to get higher than this shooting guard taking a running hook. Again, like Maxey has a humongous wingspan, but it does say like, hey, we're gonna have to have a 5 next to him, or in specific lineups when we go very small. Defensively, offensively, as a 5, he's gonna be fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but look, he's looking at one guy. Like, okay, so tell me how, like, I don't mean this poorly. Tell me how he manipulates Rajon Tucker.
I mean, the back, yeah.
It doesn't. It's just it's the difference. Again, I'm not trying to take it away from it as a pass, but he's simply reading that one advantage versus manipulating the defense. Like, there's a way to sell that this cut is happening, force Rajon to sink, and then throw the skip pass. But that's not really his mind. It's like, oh, I have a layup if I don't look at it. All I have to do is not look. Or you can see, like, as Sharif is processing stuff, like you can watch him consistently like do small little adjustments into pick and rolls. Not that he needs them to get past his guy, but because he's trying to position weak side defenders and get them to be angled or move out of specific locations on the court. It's 2 different approaches, but it's certainly
even with Banton, we talked about Banton's also not a guy who really manipulates defenses in that way, but he's also not looking for one specific action. His eyes are everywhere, and he's open to whatever happens. He's reacting quicker. So I think in that way they're pretty different. Yeah,
I think that we're sort of talking about 3 different skills. One being manipulation, one being like processing what happens on the floor, which I think that like Banton is extraordinary. Like that's Banton's thing, is that he's a really good processor. And then and then Jalen's thing is that he just recognizes advantage. where it's not he's not court mapping at a high level. He's just like, oh, that person is going to be open. I just have to throw it in a certain way. And in this similar thing, like he finds Sharif, but it's just that he senses that advantage. It's not that he set this up in a particular way. He just knows that like he can see it out of the corner of his eye. There's an advantage. I'm gonna throw it. They run the same get play that the Warriors have been running forever on that side of the line out of bounds. Sees him, able to put the ball there.
So would you say he's like Rondoing is more like Rondo is obviously like looking, well, I don't want to say obviously, but he's like more or less looking for the sure thing, but he can create others, but he's looking for like, okay, this is the pass, that's going to get the basket. Where is Johnson Rondoing because he really can't do much else in terms of like, he's so dead set on, going with that scripted option that there's no creativity.
Scripted is probably not the word. It's that like, I think that, to answer the question is that I think that like part of Rondo is that like the idea is that me making decisions is better than ball moving. Like the thing that Rondo is the most averse to is like playing summertime 5 Spurs basketball. He's like, no, with this group, we would be better rather than everybody here touching the rock and everybody making their own passing decisions. It would be better if I just made all those. Like we will get a better result. So it's just like the ball doesn't move, but we get a bunch of assists. So if you were just to like, if we had the advanced stat of passes made by team versus assists by one player, like a player who's rondoing just like tones down the amount of total assists by a team to raise up their like tamps down the number of passes a team makes in the half court to raise up their own assist numbers. It's because they just want to churn as many reads as possible. I think that he shares the same idea that like him making decisions is the best thing because he has a sense for advantage. I think that one of the best things that's ever happened to Jalen Johnson is playing with Sharif Cooper, because one, Sharif is wired a specific way where he's like, no, I want perfection. I want to be like he's a prototypical like winner guy. But like I'm sure Sharif was going insane after like losing a summer league game. But like the second thing is that like well, that was a concern with Jalen. The second thing is that he sets up easier offense that makes by setting up easier offense for Jalen, it allows him more room to be experimental. Where if he wasn't getting easy stuff, his offense can learn and turn into a lot of like the rough Scotty games, the ones where he takes like the 16-foot fadeaways. It looks a lot like that, where it's just like he can't create the advantage. Defenses have loaded up. They kind of figured out the creation pattern. And he has to take these pretty rough self-created moments. And so I think that in a lot of it, we've sort of moved past that initial phase just by playing with a pretty advanced young point guard. And also one that will enforce that the ball has to keep moving. And also when you're a guy who makes good decisions, especially good advantage decisions, if you're facing a tilted defense, that's really good for you because you can pick out better passes.
Definitely.
Anything that jumps out to you with Jalen from the week that you guys saw? Anything that surprised you? I mean, to be fair, all of this surprised me because I had no idea really where he was, other than the fact that he was named Jalen Johnson. He was about 6'10". Anything that
I'm always fascinated by the idea of small ball fives. Because on one hand, the NBA is like trending towards more and more small ball. And on the other hand, the list of people who I could say I'm comfortable as a small ball 5 is really, really short. And from what I saw, I don't know if that would ever just first reaction is that I could not see it really. I didn't really see like him moving laterally though very much in those clips, and I'm curious to hear what that's like.
I cut a wing defense clip where he again it feels like he's trying to overpower more than like play defense, which is sort of Josh's thing as well. Where it's like he wants to like punk people, and at times he loses technique because of it. He like will reach in for stuff. He will bump when it's probably not like advantageous in terms of angles. Overall, I think that like he moves fine enough, and I think that it will get there. The pick and roll footwork is a concern. I think that we do have to ask a question about what we call players who are only small ball 5s when they have a shot blocking 4 next to them. Like Scotty Barnes could play the 5, but he needs Chris Boucher, like a Chris Boucher exact type next to him.
Well, that's the thing with most small ball fives is I think your front court mate, like even OG and Pascal, neither of them are shot blockers, but they make up for it. They can play together. They can play the 4-5. I think better than a lot of teams when they go small because they both cover ground extremely quickly. They're strong. They're good rebounders. So I think the ground coverage is a huge one if you're not going to play beside a rim protector. But yeah, I'm definitely hesitant to call like someone a small ball five where it's so circumstantial depending on who they're playing besides, right?
Yeah, I just think that if you need an ultra rangy guy,
Yeah,
you're technically both 4.5s. It's just that
I agree. Yeah,
like really what we're talking about is like that's a 9. You're both 4.5s that we're like you kind of come together, you do the fusion dance, and you're the one rim protector that like your team probably wishes it could have.
no, 100%. That's why like Raptors discourse can be really frustrating between like, oh geez, the small ball five, no Pascal's, but like it doesn't matter. They need each other, and that's at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Symbiotic in that way.
Yeah, and like that's a very that's an interesting combination that like seems to exist a lot over the NBAs, where you have guys who are strong enough to be front side rim protectors, but they don't actually like truly protect the rim. Like they're more impediments than protectors, and you kind of need a protector coming over the top who also could then plant their foot and close out on the same on the weak side if the pass goes through. Which is like again, there's like 20 of those dudes in the world. It's just not like that is an extraordinarily rare archetype, and there's only 2 levels that they seem to exist is like dudes who are max guys, and then you have guys who like have real limitations offensively. I mean, like Chris Boucher, like they can become NBA players, but like they meet the physical capabilities. It's just that is such a rare archetype to ask for, and so I think that like yes, there is a pathway for Jalen Johnson to play the 5 as he's currently constructed. Obviously, he's a young player, and that stuff like could be developed, but it's more likely that he's going to need a specific construction at that point. The effort it takes to get him to being a small ball 5 is probably better suited to be invested elsewhere in his development.
Yeah.
What do we think? What do you? What do you think about his shot? You were talking about the like not hitch, I guess, but the way his legs kind of had that jerky motion. Do you think that's something that can be refined to become? I mean, obviously it can, but how much faith do you have in that becoming like?
I mean, yeah, I've good faith. Energy transfer people generally have figured out.
Okay.
It's just a matter of like getting everything on the same time. I mean, it's basically energy transfer is generally means like every part of your jumper is dancing to a different rhythm. One's in 3/4, one's in 4/4, one's in 5/4, and just getting them all in the same sheet music generally stabilizes everything. Not to mix metaphors, but
gotcha.
I think that it's one of the few things that are reps. It's also just exposure and working through a wider variation of drills. That's what like 75th percentile rebuilds look like, where you've rebuilt a jumper. And it's just a matter of smoothing it out at the end, and getting everything to work in concert. That's the word I was looking for earlier. But yeah, I think that's the thing that teams have generally figured out now. Like I feel like there's very few issues that like teams haven't got better ideas about than they did 5 or 10 years ago. I think if there's no more questions, I'm going to read this one, and then I think we can call it because you guys have been so graceful with your time. I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate it. The question is at Jalen's age, if we're talking at Jalen's age, is one read / good decision making about a skill set that contribute on an NBA floor right now? And the answer is absolutely, as long as they're facing a tilted defense. And I can guarantee you that Jalen Johnson will play 100% of his NBA minutes with one of Trae Young. Or I would say potentially 2 or 3 of Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, or Sharif Cooper, and that will guarantee a tilted floor for him, where those decisions are not just contributive, but valuable, because he's capable of putting pressure on defense with his physical tools and then making a good decision. And like we spent 5 years talking about with Draymond, if you can take 2 dribbles and make a good decision, when you're presented advantage, you are a playoff level player. And I'm not saying that he will be that in year one, but that's certainly the profile. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your extreme patience for running this this marathon. I cannot thank you enough. You've been wonderful. Let the people know where they can find you. Plug everything you've ever written. You've been so kind with your time. I will later show up to every person who's ever watched this and ask and give them a pop quiz because this is now essential. I don't think I won't do it. You've clearly seen the links I will go to enforce my basketball opinions. Oren, you wanna let them know where they must read you?
Sure, yeah. Well, give me a follow on Twitter to keep up with my work. That's the best place, at Oren Weisfeld. And then, most of my Raptors related work is at Raptors Republic, and then I have some other NBA work at Sportsnet, Complex, The Guardian. So follow me on Twitter, and thanks for having me. This was very enjoyable.
Thank you. Who's up next?
I got to throw out. You can find me on Twitter at Corban NBA. A lot of my content right now is like all audio. So of course, Ramble and other various podcasts. I'm going to try to get back in the writing game though, so that'll be fun. But that journey will be on Twitter at Corban NBA. And just echoing comments earlier, thank you again for having me. It's been a real joy to be on with you guys.
You can find me mostly on Twitter, like these guys, at @MarcoRomo_. Read my stuff at 5 Reasons Sports. Recently had an article about Miami Heat's defense and how good I think it'll be. And this coming week, I have a show, Full Court Press, which is on our 5 Reasons YouTube. We're going to talk about young cores. So a lot of Cleveland talk, a lot of Houston talk over there, if you want to keep going with these prospects. I just want to thank you for having me. I love talking basketball. It's like my favorite thing. It's been real fun.
Does Max Strus count in Miami's young core?
I think he's my age, so no.
I mean, maybe Heat culture also rolls back time. I don't know. I mean, if you've only been there for 2 years, you might still be young. We'll see. So again, thank you guys for coming out. This was we covered 4 funky dudes today in terms of their games. I just appreciate it so much. This is one of the things that happens with random sign-ups is you just get weird constellations of players that make, like, when you look at them, you're like, what is this? And then you get halfway through, like, oh, these are all like strange guys who have fun little pathways to development. I wouldn't have looked at it, but like, yeah, Jalen Johnson and Max Strus, hand in glove, and about 30 minutes into this, I was like, oh, this is gonna be perfect. You can follow me on Twitter at Above the Break 3. I do my writing on Patreon. The work is always free. But if you are capable of donating $5, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you're on the stream, honestly, the best thing you could possibly do is, if you are a person who uses Prime, just use your monthly Twitch Prime sub to subscribe to this channel. It costs you $0. It's a thing that comes with your Prime package. It's like $5 or something, and I get that money, and it costs you nothing. We're gonna be doing this for a minute. I think like 3, 4, 5 more days, depending on people, and we're just gonna keep thumbing through it. So thank you guys so much for sticking around. Thank you to our wonderful guests. Make sure you tap in with them, because they're more than 3 hours of a fountain of knowledge. They appear to have so much to give. Again, thank you, and have a wonderful night.